I know you've had,
Ron.
I didn't have days solo.
oh, you've had experience.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order tonight's meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And the first order of business is the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with the requirement of the Open Public Meetings Law, notice of this meeting of the Board of Adjustment of the Township of Bernards was posted on the bulletin board of the town, in the reception hall of the municipal building, Collier Lane, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. It was also mailed to the Bernardsville News, Whippany, New Jersey, the Courier News, Bridgewater, New Jersey, and it was also filed with the Township Clerk, all on January 6th of this year, and it was mailed electronically to all those people who have requested individual notice. The following procedure has been adopted by the Bernards Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. There will be no new cases heard tonight after 10 p.m. and no new testimony heard after 10:30 p.m. tonight. Ms. Keeper, can you do tonight's roll call, please?
Certainly. Mr. Amin, Mr. Cabria, Mr. Kraus, and Mr. Halverson have all indicated that they are unable to attend this evening. Chairwoman Janiers,
Here.
Ms. Baumann,
Here.
Mr. Pavlovsky,
Here.
Ms. Pakhtar,
Here.
Mr. Tancredi,
Here.
Mr. Warner,
Here.
Mr. Quinn,
Here.
Mr. Schley will be with us by phone, and Ms. Kiefer is present. Madam Chair, you have a quorum, you may proceed.
Terrific, thank you, Ms. Keeper. I will entertain a motion at this time to excuse the absences of the four members that Ms. Keefer said was unable to attend tonight.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Also tonight, for anybody who's here to hear the New Jersey American Water, Inc. case, we will not be hearing that case tonight. We are going to carry that case to February 16th, 2023. With notice?
Actually,
Do we have to
with notice,
that?
correct?
With notice?
Or without further notice?
It's my understanding that the applicant will be noticing again.
Will be,
Yes.
yes. So with further
Okay,
notice.
so
but-
with further notice to
I thought.
February 16th, 2023. So that case will not be heard tonight.
If I may, Madam
Yes,
Chair,
please.
7:30 p.m., this same municipal building location,
Same bat channel.
same bat channel.
Yes.
I think of that every time I say it. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have two for tonight. 5A, which is the minutes from our meeting October 5th, 2022, which were circulated earlier. Does anyone have any comments or edits on the October 5th meeting? And if not, we'll have a motion to approve as drafted.
We'll make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Pakhtar.
Second.
Thanks, Mr. McCready.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
One abstention.
We
if you
have Mr.
noted.
Pavlovsky, who will abstain because he was absent for that meeting.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our October 13th special session meeting. Same instructions, any comments, edits, or approvals as drafted?
We just had that one on page 3, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, last sentence, there would be little, add the word be.
And the version that you have tonight that I circulated this morning, which is version 3, does have that correction
Okay.
in there already.
Agreed.
Didn't read that one.
So on the new amended version, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Bellin.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Proctor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And everybody on the dais is eligible?
Yep.
So,
No abstentions.
No
We had a
abstentions.
full house that night.
we certainly did.
Okay, next up on the agenda is the approval of several resolutions. The first one is the Jacobs resolution, which was ZB 22019. Any comments or edits or motions with respect to the Jacobs resolution?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Ballard.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
And in this one, Mr. Pavlovsky must abstain because he was not present at that meeting. Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes.
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next resolution is the Powell Resolution, ZB 22020. Comments, edits, or motions?
Madam Chair, I have a couple of edits.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
On page 5, in the first paragraph, it's referred to as applicants have. It was actually just one applicant.
Is that the applicant?
Ms. Powell was just single applicant.
So we'll delete the S and the have.
The as and the have, and then also in the next paragraph, almost the last sentence, same thing.
Same thing.
And then, that was it.
Okay, with those edits, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as drafted.
There's one more.
Oh,
Yep, it's similar in
Paragraph
paragraph
I mean, as
5.
amended, sorry.
Yep.
That's okay, yep.
In paragraph 5, okay. So with those amendments, is there a motion, Ms. Baumann?
Ms. Pakhtar motioned.
Yeah, I make a motion to
Thank you,
approve as
Ms.
amended.
Pakhtar.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
And again, Mr. Pavlovsky is ineligible since he was absent that evening. Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes,
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Ventriglia resolution, which is ZB 22018.
I got one for you there, too.
good proofreading.
Ms. Baumann?
Page 6, first paragraph in the decision. The NJSA title is referred to as 70, and then it looks like it's supposed to be C, parenthetical 1.
Oh, the first time, yeah, something happened there.
Yeah, just a typo.
Thank you.
And I think that was the only one I had in there.
Any other edits? Or a motion to approve as amended?
Madam Chair, I motion to approve with the edits.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
Again, Mr. Pavlovsky is ineligible. Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes,
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes. Thank you, Cindy. Next resolution is the SOLID resolution, which is ZB 22017. Comments, suggestions, or a motion?
This was a 5-1, so.
I
I know. I
I
got it.
I know
actually-
you know, you and I both keep track.
I got it.
But
I went over these about 10 times.
I have one question, but I think that it's, probably doesn't need an edit. It's on page 3, paragraph 7, where it notes that the applicants propose a fencing style that is less than 50% open. It was only on the frontage of the property, and the rest of the property, the fence was more than 50% open. It is noted on page 8 and 10. Does it need to be noted in paragraph 7 on page 3?
discretion of the board.
Then I don't care, as long as it's noted elsewhere.
Is the member who voted no ineligible to vote on this resolution?
No.
Yes.
Wait, or is-
It's my only question.
Yeah, the member who voted no is ineligible.
Ineligible.
Ineligible, right.
Yeah. Is
Correct.
that member here this evening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Person may be.
yes.
Ah,
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as drafted.
As drafted. Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
Mr. Pavlovsky and Mr. Pavlovsky must abstain. Mr. Tancredi is ineligible to vote. Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes,
Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next resolution is Zhang Zhao, which is ZB 22023. Any comments or edits on this resolution before a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Pawlowski?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes.
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
And Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes. Okay, next resolution is the Campbell Resolution, ZB 22024. Any comments or edits on this resolution?
I do have a question. So in the, on page 9, we note that the applicants shall revise the design of the proposed so that the lot does not exceed 25.3. So we didn't stipulate to the sidewalk, correct? We just gave them the percentage.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. Just clarifying. So I'm good. So I would make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
And Chairwoman Juniors, you are ineligible for this.
Thank you, Ms. Keeper.
Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Pawlowski?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes.
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Okay, and the last resolution of tonight is the Silva Resolution, which is ZB 22025. Any comments or edits or motion with respect to this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve as drafted.
Thank you, Ms. Pakhtar.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tancredi.
Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Pawlowski?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes.
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Chairwoman Juniors?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving right along. Next on the agenda is the completeness hearing for signature acquisitions, ZB 22028. Want to come on up? Hi.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, board members. My name is Michael Silbert, and I'm an attorney at the law firm D. Francesco Bateman in Warren Township. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Signature Acquisitions. And I'm here because the applicant is seeking a waiver request for the requirement to submit a New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection letter of interpretation for the delineation of the freshwater wetlands. The applicant submitted an LOI application to the NJDEP back on July 22nd, 2022, and that application is pending. It's the applicant's intention to request a waiver for completeness purposes only, with the understanding that the board can request any documentation at a later date and time at the hearing, and that should the board approve the application, an approval could be conditioned upon government agency approvals.
And if I may, Madam Chair, we have, of course, our engineer, Mr. Quinn, here, but we also have, as may not be as obvious to everyone, we have Mr. Schley here as well, coming in through FaceTime on an iPhone, as I understand it. He can hear and see, as well as be heard somewhat and be seen if you look close enough. And but he is here for purposes of weighing in. I'm going to swear you both in, even though it's not a public hearing per se, but a completeness hearing. If you'll both raise your right hand.
Make sure you're turned up, David.
And you'll be raising your right hand by both. Well, there you go. Okay. Do both of you swear to God or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you both. And the reason I do that, Madam Chair, is because often we like to hear from one or both of our professionals with respect to the deeming the application complete. The LOI is the only thing that's missing. An application was made, but I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, so perhaps we can ask Mr. Schley and or Mr. Quinn if they want to weigh in.
We do.
Should we start with Mr. Schley?
Yeah, Mr. Schley, thanks for joining us.
Since we have him here. Two-dimensional, though, maybe?
Yes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, we
Yes.
can.
Actually, yeah.
Okay. So I issued a completeness review memo dated November 8th, 2022. That memo simply states that the only outstanding item for this application is the letter of interpretation from NJDEP verifying the wetlands delineation. and the applicant's here to request a waiver for that.
Okay, and then just to be clear, it's only for completeness purposes. We will be able to.
Yes, they've already made that application, and hopefully, even for DEP, it should be issued by the time the application would be heard, and it would be a condition of approval if the application is approved.
And counsel for the applicant did make that clear on behalf of the applicant, so. Would it be fair to say, Mr. Schley, if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
that you don't have a specific objection to the LOI being, waiver request being granted for purposes of checklist?
I have no objection to the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Sy. Mr. Quinn, any comments?
No, this is commonly done. I've had this on many of my applications as well, so.
Okay. Terrific.
I haven't seen it. Who's submitting your application?
Signature acquisitions?
No, I meant the consultant,
Oh,
you know? Doesn't matter. Oh, Eco, okay, I didn't see you there, Rob, I'm sorry, thank you. That's it, I have no issues.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
if I-
David.
If I may add one other item, not specifically germane, and I apologize to the request to be deemed complete, but it's my understanding that the board may wish to have a traffic engineer on behalf of the board to give independent advice to the board throughout the hearing on this matter, which apparently will be scheduled for early 2023, maybe January.
January 4th.
So if that is the pleasure of the board, perhaps the board could just confirm same, and if it is, my understanding is that we've had Joe Fishinger previously serve in that capacity for other applications for our board, so if there's no objection to him serving, we can make that inquiry if he's available, and if he's not available, if perhaps we, as board professionals, can have the authority to pursue an alternative if Mr. Fishinger's unavailable. So it's sort of a three-part request.
Yeah, I think that makes sense in this case, certainly with the expectation that we're gonna be dealing with parking and adequate parking and, with the buildings going in. So I think it makes a lot of sense to just get that traffic study done up front.
And in fairness, for the board's edification, I did have an opportunity to raise that issue with applicant's counsel, who had no objection to the board proceeding in that fashion.
So would our motion have to include that as well, or would we only grant the whole?
Candidly, we don't really need the motion. I'm more
Think you're
looking
good,
for the
David.
authorization, and whether it's Mr.
Are you watching
Fisher
online?
or someone else, there'll be a resolution
hold you
for
until
the
they're
board
done.
to adopt to retain him, probably at our next meeting in December, so that he's formally retained. And at that point, we'll have the motion second and the roll call vote on that resolution.
Okay, so just with respect to this motion, just to be clear, if the board grants it, it would be to deem the application incomplete, granting a waiver.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, deem it complete.
Deem it complete, granting the
Granting
waiver
the
for the.
I'm sorry, granting the waiver for this, right, exactly.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was conflating the two, I thought you were talking about the Mr. Fishinger authorization,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, that we do need a motion, then a second and a roll call vote on.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the board or a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion
Thank you,
to
Mr.
grant the application complete and grant the submission waiver for the LOI.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Collins.
Ms. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Pavlovsky?
Yes.
Ms. Pakhtar?
Yes.
Mr. Tancredi?
Yes.
Chairwoman Janiers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next year.
All right, David. Take care.
Thank you.
Are we formally scheduling it and announcing that now for purposes of?
I've advised council that, as
all
of
right.
this point, that's where we're at.
I'm gonna keep, you want Mr. Schley on for the next one, just to keep here, all right? Relax, Dave, grab something to eat, have a drink.
Blow your nose.
Okay, so let's keep, we're good to continue?
Pardon me?
We don't need to schedule anything.
Should've brought my
Yes,
stand
by
for
law.
this thing.
They were notified.
They'll get a letter from me tomorrow confirming that and also requesting the remaining 13
Can you see? You can
packets
see?
of applications that
All
are,
right.
each one is
Well, it's
about-
either the wall or the ceiling, I'm not sure.
And are they including their own traffic study?
Oh, yeah, they will be, yeah.
And we're hiring a traffic engineer to review and,
Exactly,
They're paying
exactly.
for it.
I've worked with Mr. Fissinger several times.
Good, so that should be good. Okay, next up, is the completeness and public hearing for Kirsten Light, which is ZB 22026.
Madam Chair, if I may, while
Yes.
they're approaching, I did have an opportunity to review the notice, found the content to be sufficient, found the notice to be timely served and published, certified mail service October 27th, published the same date, both of which are at least 10 days, were at least 10 days prior to this evening. So the board does have jurisdiction to hear and decide the application this evening, in my opinion.
Good news. Mr. Warner?
Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
Sally.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, board professionals, plural. Frederick Zelli, Millington, New Jersey, on behalf of the applicant Kirsten Light. This is for 13 Victoria Drive at your tax block 5001, Lot 2, located in your R4 residential zone. This is a mea culpa application for a 2021 pool project that clearly went awry. It appears that both the original engineering firm, I won't mention their name, erred in making their coverage calculations, and that the swimming pool contractor failed to follow the plans when constructing the pool, such as the plans were. The applicant is proposing to remove a portion of her driveway in addition to the portion that was already supposed to have been removed per the 2021 plan, and also to remove a gravel walkway in order to mitigate the excess coverage. I will note that the original plans have been changed somewhat, although you will see the revised plan this evening. We are net now down to requesting 17.5%, when 15% is what's permitted in your zone. Currently exists, the corrected coverage now is 19.7. We had originally stated 20.1. I'll let Mr. Hollows explain how the numbers are changing and why they're not changing, but the good news is they keep coming down. So we are seeking now 17.5, as I said, whereas 15 is what's required or permitted. Furthermore, we have a slight rear setback issue with the patio for the pool. It's supposed to be 20 feet, as you know. It was constructed at 19.3 feet, so we are seeking a variance for that relief as well. I will save any arguments regarding positive, negative criteria for later. I have two witnesses this evening, Ms. Light herself and Mr. Hollows, our engineer. There's no other questions for me. I'd like them to be sworn in.
And I'll swear in our board professionals as well. All four of you will raise your right hand. I do need to see Mr. Schley raise his right hand.
Get it
Thank
up,
you.
David.
Do all four of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you all.
I'm going to go in the opposite of my normal order. I'm going to let Mr. Hollows go first and just go over the different numbers and what you're looking at, and also to present the revised plan, which we're going to hand out since it's less than 10 days.
I have 11 by 17 inch drawings show the change, and I'll explain the changes.
And this is different than what we have, right?
We'll mark it Exhibit A1.
Yes.
thank you. Do you want one for Dave? Do you want to leave one for,
Dave has the
He has it.
PDF of
He's
the,
got PDF.
and actually his review letter that he sent to the board is based on this
this.
revision.
Right, both Dave and I got the revision, I think, Friday, and so it's reflected in our letters.
By the way, for the record, the pool is behind every adjacent rear property building line.
Thank you,
Had to say it.
thank you, yeah, you do. You don't get to say that very often out there, do you?
Mr. Hollows, you're up.
The first rendering I have, which is actually the property survey,
So, I'm sorry, board will want to accept you as an expert in the field of civil engineering, I suspect.
Mr. Hollows, your license in New Jersey as a professional engineer is still in good standing this evening?
it is,
You've appeared in front of this board a few times, maybe?
yes.
We will accept you as a professional engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first render drawing is the property survey. It's been revised since the original survey. The revision has to do with the driveway. It was misplotted, it kind of went off at an angle, and then went into the house. That's the reduction that you'll see or hear in some of the numbers.
And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting already, Madam Chair, it never takes me long, I apologize, but we're gonna have to mark this now, this is a colorized rendering. Is it a colorized rendering of page 2 of A1?
No, it's of
What
the property survey.
Okay, so A2 is a colorized rendering
Survey.
of the survey. Okay, and does it have a date?
August 3rd, 2021, revised November 3rd, 2022.
Okay, and just to go backwards, A1 was November 1, 2022 was the date on that revised set of drawings, A1.
That's
For those of us keeping track. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
The property is known as 13 Victoria Drive. It is Lot 2, Block 5001. It sits between Annan Road and Tuxford Terrace. It's on the southwesterly side of Victoria Drive. It is part of the Mount Airy Estate subdivision that was done in 1966. And those lots were based on a 40,000 square foot, what at the time was called the Builder's Acre lot, and this lot has 40,968 square feet, 0.94 acres, which is existing non-conforming condition based on the revised zoning that took place not too many years ago. It's improved with a two-story frame dwelling, has a paved drive. It has a patio and a walkway in the back, off a small deck. And then to the rear of the property is the pool, with the pool deck that goes around, and the rocks is a waterfall. And then in the back, we have a shed. Along the property line, there's a hedge, or evergreen row of trees, screening the pool. And on the westerly side, you've got another screening of hemlock evergreen trees. And then you've got some wooded area around the perimeter. The front is mostly lawn with some scattered trees around. The backyard is all fenced in. There is we call it a stone area. It's kind of a low spot that was put in the yard, and rather than having standing water there, they put river cobble in that area. It's not for walking or not for putting chairs in. It's a bigger river cobble too, so a little bit more difficult to walk on that. So I'll just give you the numbers.
Mr. Hollis, this is now a colored version of A1, is that right?
This is the November 1st, 2021 revision with the corrected driveway.
Mark that as A3, Mr. Warren?
Yes, please. But it is the same as, well, it's not the same as A1.
No.
So it is what it is, a colorized version of,
Page 2 of 2 of the site plan that was submitted to the board.
of it, which was A1.
A1, page
Yeah,
2.
Okay, okay.
So just so we're clear, submitted to the board this evening. It's the
Yep.
11-1, the current.
Yes.
Yes, so colorized A1. Yep.
And right now, as Mr. Zelli had indicated, we're at 19.7 lot coverage, the way everything sits there presently. And the proposal is to reduce the driveway backup area and remove that pavement. And then there's a gravel walk on the southwesterly side of the house, and that would be removed. And that brings the lot coverage down to 17 point, on my drawing is 17.5, I think Dave went, he put another digit in there, 17.45.
And how much is each of those things? I assume a lot more of that is coming from the driveway, but do you know what the,
731 square feet from the driveway.
do you know what the percentages are? Only because you said 19.7 to 17.45. Do you know what the breakdown is between those two things?
This and
Yeah.
no, I don't.
That's okay. What's the square feet?
731 square feet to the driveway, and the walkway, the gravel walkway is 171 square feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Hollis, just to be clear, some of that driveway removal was contemplated in 2021, but did
That's
not
correct.
happen.
The
Can you show
site
which area that
plan
is?
for the pool had a removal of part of that driveway.
But we are now proposing to remove that, which hasn't happened yet, and also remove additional driveway, correct?
That's correct.
Can you show the two areas on the map?
I don't show the two areas, I just show the existing driveway and what's coming off of that.
All right.
And then the setback variance that's being requested has to do with this area to the backside of the pool. So that rear property line is supposed to be 20, it's 19.3. And again, this is a evergreen row of trees along that property line. And just directly behind that area is a large pole barn, a metal pole barn. I don't think we're really affecting any of the neighbors with that request for that variance.
So the setback is 19.3 from the pool, not from the patio,
In the patio,
from the patio.
We'll go through the reports briefly unless the board has questions for Mr. Hollis at the moment.
Yeah, Bill, what are you showing now currently is the distance between the garage door and the new edge of the apron?
garage door is 40 feet.
Between that and where you're
And what we're removing actually is
wow.
close to 30 feet.
So you still have 40 feet left between the garage door and the back end of the
Yes.
apron? Okay.
And is that enough, Mr. Quinn, in your opinion, to back out of car?
It's more than enough.
More than
30
enough.
feet,
30 feet.
30 to 32 feet is comfortable.
Thank you.
It really aligns well with the existing driveway going out to the street.
Mr. Hollis, let's just go through the reports very quickly. You've reviewed Mr. Schley's November 7th, 2022 memo?
Yes.
Okay. And if you would, just take us through the comments. If there's anything that's just factual, tell us that. And certainly tell us if there's anything we cannot comply with for any reason.
So we've taken care of the driveway correction. Clarification on the, this rock area, the waterfall area was not counted in as coverage. You know, it's just on the ground there, the base of it.
So there's no impervious underneath it.
That's correct.
Can you correspond to which comment number under Mr. Schley's
So I
That
November?
would've
think
been
that's 6A,
6A.
right? 6A?
Oh, you're up to 6, okay.
Yeah.
I guess
Maybe-
1 through 5 are, for the most part,
Mostly factual, correct?
factual recitations, but there was something in his book here. Okay, so you've explained, number 2, you've explained already. All right, so we're up to 6A.
6B.
6B is the stone area I mentioned
I'm
before.
sorry, did you say 6A, the rocks should not be counted?
Correct.
And they were not encountered.
Were not counted.
Can I just ask, who took the
Should they be
pictures?
counted?
No.
We'll get to that.
Okay. Well, I have a question, just because on one of the pictures, it looks like the rocks are on the patio, so I just want to
I
clarify.
think the patio goes right up to that. That's what makes it look like it.
Okay. I'll have a question then on one of the pictures, so.
So has like a, sorry, did I just jump in?
No, you didn't.
Does somebody inspect under these rocks to make sure it's all?
You know, we'll get to the pictures, I guess. Keep going.
6B has to do with the stone area that I mentioned before, that is kind of a low spot in the yard, where they, rather than have standing water there, because it all kind of drains to that area, they put some river cobble. So it's a kind of a rain garden without any plants in it.
And you have already not included that in the calculations, correct?
That's correct. And 6C has to do with a typo on the drawing. We have 6648, when you add up the numbers, it's actually 6618. If the board were to approve it, we would obviously correct that. And I have submitted a revised survey that has to do with item number 7. I given it to Ms. Kiefer this evening.
Ms. Light will address number 8. And number 9. And number 10. So we're good for Mr. Schley's report for now. Mr. Quinn's report. Do you have that one?
I think we're, kind of 1 and 2 are stating facts. I think 3 is stating a fact. They're probably all facts, or I'll say.
And number 5.
I think you've already addressed number 5. A couple, I mean, this, it just always amazes me how, the big issue for me is we had a permit where you were right at 15%. I don't know how this happens. I don't know if there's any discussion between the contractor and the owner. Nobody seems to know until it happens, but we had a permit application that was right at 15%. And and it's clear that all of the existing impervious was understated. Every single item on that old plan. It wasn't even the same, percentage. I see if it was a scale problem, because oftentimes, but everything was off by a different percentage on the old drawing. So she was already saddled with a lot that was between 14 and 15% even before it decided to engage in the pool. So some of it was problematic to begin with. But then the pool patio mushrooms from what's shown is just enough to go around the pool, and we've seen this before, to something that is probably more in keeping with what people would want. And I'm always amazed, and I'm often wondered how it goes from a plan that somebody spends money and time to show a depiction that gets blown up in the field to the point where nobody seems to know until it's too late.
Understood. I think we'll have a little more testimony probably on that. So.
Right. But overall, my other point being for stormwater, this still would be below the threshold of the township's major or even minor stormwater requirement, right? So we're at about, from the nearest I can tell based on Bill's new numbers, we're at just about 1,000 square feet of impervious cover increase relative to what was there prior to the pool, as near as I can tell. So, and half of that is the pool water surface, so the other couple hundred square feet would not trigger the stormwater management. So it wouldn't normally trigger that. So stormwater's not apt to be an issue in association with this application. But
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
really, that's the nut of it for me.
Thank you.
Which is actually a very good segue to the third report, which is from the Environmental Commission, where they're going on about drainage, suggesting that a stone recharge area be provided where the driveway is being removed. Mr. Hollows, is that necessary, do you believe, in your professional opinion?
I think we kind of have one already in this low spot that the yard drains to, and then we have the gravel area. Now, I didn't dig down to see how deep it is, but it's definitely there to capture the water that comes across the yard, so. It is.
Where exactly is that gravel area located?
This is a really odd property. It'd be the southerly corner, because it's a very, not a rectangular lot, which most of them in that development are, rectangular lots. But it is this would be the southerly corner. This is north, going.
Yeah, I can see, well, I see the arrow.
Mr. Hollows, if water did manage to get past that stone area, am I correct in seeing it would be headed towards the street, not towards the neighbor's house or improved part of their property?
No,
It does get, it has to go the other way?
yeah, it would go in this general direction. It does slope towards the rear of the property.
I'll ask Ms. Light if she's ever had an issue with her neighbor. Okay.
Can I say something else? And I appreciate what Bill is representing. And I looked at the property myself, and it seems like most of the topo from the house, I couldn't see what's happening behind the pool, but most of the topo from the house comes out to the street. Even though, you noticed in my report, I said this wouldn't normally trigger stormwater management because the thresholds aren't met. But in general, it does not preclude the board from requiring maybe some stormwater management if impervious coverage has been exceeded, no matter how much, right? I mean, if you're over the impervious cover limitations, there's always the possibility that you may require stormwater from the applicant, even though the minor threshold hasn't been. That's why I said in my report, in normal circumstances, when you're below the impervious coverage. Now, I don't know what the soil situation is like out there. I don't think there's any inlets out front to connect to if you were gonna do storm drainage. So I try not to complicate these things. But I just toss that out to the board, that you're not, just because the minor development applies, it doesn't mean in cases where the impervious coverage is exceeded, that you can, if you think it necessary, mitigate regardless of the definition of the project.
I can speak a little bit to that, because I lived in this neighborhood for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Over on Granville Way. Soil conditions are poor.
Are they?
And because of the location of this house, there is no storm drainage right
Yeah.
in front of it.
Saw that.
It's down towards Tuxford Terrace or out towards Annan Road. So I don't believe a dry well or there's something, a system like that would really work in this soil condition.
And now this impervious coverage has been there for a while, right? No complaints from your neighbor about runoff from the property or, okay.
But, you know, we'll,
Yet.
we'll get there.
We'll add
get there.
yet.
None that have been given to
We'll
me
get
that
there.
I'm aware of.
Okay.
No conversations.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll get, everyone will be heard, okay?
So right now, the water is flowing to the corner of the property into a gravel pit
That would be.
under
this-
the trees
This
there.
area here, I have to agree with Mr. Quinn that the water from in front of the house goes out towards the street. But this area, this is actually a low spot in this general area where the water goes to that gravel area.
Bill, where
I'm
would
sure
water,
that's why it was put there.
where would water off of the patios by the pool and so forth, where would that hit? The impervious that we're dealing with primarily.
Do we don't have a topo.
That's all.
Some topo.
It wasn't
I guess
on
some
the
of it would
permit
go
plan
towards,
either, which is kind of
shed towards
surprising.
the rear,
That's what-
some would come actually out towards the driveway. It's not, the pool kind of sits up and then it's shed from the pool,
Okay.
probably in all directions.
And what about from the other patio off the deck?
There's some
This, I
limited
believe,
topo.
would go out towards the street.
Actually, you know what, I missed, there is some limited topo, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt Bill. There's some limited topo on the original permit plan. That kind of shows the area from the pool and patio shedding towards the rear yard. There's a couple of swales, I don't know if they were built in the field, but there's a couple of swales that seem to try to bring the water towards the side property lines, but it looks like there could be runoff that goes towards the rear of the property in association with this. It's very rough topo on here.
.15 is almost insignificant for runoff.
Say again?
I said that .15.
I'm sorry, can you, Board Member Pavlovsky, if you can
The
speak into the mic.
.15 difference in elevation, that's almost insignificant for runoff, that's why.
It's flat. I mean, we like 2% lawn areas, but
Yeah.
Okay, so the gravel area that was put in, what's underneath that? Is it just the bad soil that doesn't drain well? Or is there some kind of drainage under it?
I doubt that there's drainage under, I think it's just a gravel pit kind of thing.
Do you know how deep the gravel
I
goes,
don't.
like just to collect?
I mean, the gravel was put there for a reason, so there was something that was known. They didn't put the gravel there because
I'll
there's
ask.
nowhere else to store it, right? Purpose was for,
I'm gonna ask Ms. Light when she testifies. She was there for that, Mr. Hollows wasn't, right, right. Just to keep the record clean.
Okay.
That's it for reports, so
Okay.
unless
Any
there's
other
questions for the board, I have nothing
questions
further
the
for Mr.
engineer?
Hollows.
Otherwise, we'll continue with the testimony.
Nothing
Okay.
to answer.
Do we have any questions from any of the testimony we heard from the engineer? It's not the time for a comment, but it is a time if you have a question based upon any of the testimony we just heard. You have to come up if you have a question. Do you have a question for the engineer?
Well, I mean, if I can't see anything you're talking about. It's a bit of sensory
Okay, come on up.
deprivation sitting
Come
back
on up.
there, so I don't know if we have any questions.
Okay.
We have not seen, I'm sorry, okay. We haven't seen any of this, so.
just so you understand, it's a public hearing, it's
Yes.
a quasi-judicial process. Question each witness, and then under oath, thereafter, you make your public comments as testimony. I suspect I can speak for the board when I say this, and I'm sure they'll tell me if I'm wrong. We want you to see and hear everything. So please feel free to come up close, whatever you need to do to see all the evidence, to hear all the.
I think
We
our only
heard.
option is to sit next to Mr. Pavlovsky.
You can come up and
We
take a
can-
look,
because
and we
we
can
can't see
turn,
They
we
can
could also
turn those.
turn the,
Yeah,
That would be very helpful. We
Okay.
didn't get the handouts or anything,
Okay.
so that's all.
right, and here's a handoff.
we can give you a handout.
Thank you.
Can we give her a handout of the revised
Please,
plans,
yes.
please? Yes, you can take them. You can
No,
take
that's
it.
okay, they're extra,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, but.
And there's plans in the back, so if you have questions, you'll have an opportunity to ask any of the witnesses that you hear from tonight. And then at the end, if you want to make a comment for or against the application, we'll give you an opportunity to do that.
Please.
If you have a question. Do you have a question for the engineer? Hang on one sec. Hang on. Come on up to the microphone. Come on up.
And the way it works is we need to first get your name and address.
Michael Storch, 121 Annan Road.
Michael Storch, Storch,
Yes,
and 121
Annan
Annan.
Road, yeah. behind.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
And sorry,
We're not
where is that relative to?
Oh,
the-
we basically own the drainage.
You
Do
are,
you know what your lot number is?
No,
That I do not know.
I'm
Can we-
sure we're on the map.
Yeah.
We are the rear of the property.
We are
can
the
you
rear.
point to where you are on that map for us?
Lot
I think we might be number 44. Yeah, there's my car in the driveway, so we're number 44.
Lot, is that number 44 or lot?
It's, sorry, it's 44 on the map.
Oh, hang on the aerial
She's
shot.
looking on the,
Yeah, on the aerial. We just want to get this.
If you're looking at the drawings, the original drawing, it's this lot on Annan Road. It touches the very corner of a.
We have a lot
second
number,
property.
Mr. Hollows?
It is lot 44.
Lot 44, thank you. Okay.
So-
Now, this is, I'm sorry,
Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair.
We have your address. I was just going to ask, do you have a question based upon the
I guess
engineer's
my-
testimony?
My question is more just like a confirmation. There is no disputing that all of the water is not going towards the front, it is going towards the back.
I think that's what we've
This
deferred.
would
We
be
want to
te-
confirm
this
that.
I want to also confirm.
This would be testimony, but perhaps what you want to ask Mr. Hollows is what you just said, and ask him, isn't that correct?
Okay, is it correct, is it correct that,
Mr. Hollows?
Mr. Hollis, is it correct that all the water off 13 Victoria property, or a good amount of it, goes towards the rear of the property?
No. It's not correct.
Maybe
What-
it's for Mr. Quinn then, because Mr. Quinn, I thought we heard you say, obviously stormwater, we know it's been a big problem for everyone, but I believe there was a.
Maybe we could let Mr. Hollows answer first. and then
Yes, I think that's right. We'll make sure,
No, that was not correct.
hang on, we'll make sure that you get to ask all your questions, you make all your comments. Don't worry about being cut off, but we just need to do it in the right order, okay?
What I had said before is that this pool sits up a little bit from the surrounding ground, and it goes off in every direction. So if you go to the south, the east, the west, and to the north, and the front yard goes towards Victoria. And this area of the lawn, a good part of this area of the lawn, goes to this low spot that we were talking about, the gravel in the corner of the property.
Correct.
So, yes, some of the water goes towards your property, some of the water goes towards the pole barn, some of the water would go towards the corner lot on Annan and.
But correct, there
Victoria.
is, no, I'm sorry, I'm saying, but correct, there is we'll say, a low point that has some type of river stone there where water accumulates, right? Is that correct?
That would be the opposite corner of your property. The furthest away from your property is where the gravel that I'm speaking of.
That looks like trees on the map, so I'm sorry, the green thing you're
No.
pointing to there is gravel? Sorry. This is a problem that we couldn't see. it, so I
Mhm,
appreciate
that's
you
fine.
having
No,
the
no,
opportunity.
that's okay.
This one isn't colored, it's the same drawing, and it's this is what I'm talking about.
But so right now,
And your property's over here,
if we were to walk over there, would we see gravel?
yes.
It's not green, so the map showing it in green is,
Well, the trees are over top, but the tree umbrella is over.
It's a canopy of trees on top, if if you were looking at it from an aerial, so you would
Yeah.
see trees.
So I think he's saying
But below the
on
trees, you
the
would.
ground, there's gravel in the opposite corner from where you guys are.
And I wasn't testifying, I was just asking if that's what Mr. Hollows is telling us.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
We
this
appreciate
is
your
a-
efforts
It's
to
what we
help.
call river cobble, a surrounded stone, that-
Yes.
and it's a circular area.
Okay. And then, if I could ask a question with relation to lot 43, is there an elevation difference on the property line between the lot in question and lot 43? It's the longest, to me, it looks like the longest property line. Is there an elevation difference between those two properties? It seems to me there is, but that's why I want to ask if that's.
There is quite a difference, and 43 is a kind of unique property.
Certainly is.
You've got a house in the front, you've got a driveway that goes back to the pole barn, and the pole barn and the house are on two different levels. The pole barn sits much higher than the house. And I believe that this is relatively flat once you get up to the pole barn area, and then you've got the slope that goes down towards the house, and then the driveway would take the water out to the Bannon Road.
And if I look at the map, sorry, the image, I don't know what we're referring to.
Yep, the aerial
That
image.
appears to be that lot 43, all dirt. And I don't know when this image was taken, but I don't see leaves on the trees. So there's no grass or other things in that lot as far as we can tell,
If
right?
you took it when the leaves were on the trees, you wouldn't get to see the house, so a lot of times those photographs.
No, that's fine. I wanted to make sure I had the time of year right on this, because I guess I'm just trying to say, there's nothing on that lot that's gonna absorb. If we're talking about poor soil conditions, I'm not seeing anything on this lot that is designed 43, which I know is not an issue here, but I'm not seeing anything here that is going to help with the storm runoff either.
Isn't that correct, Mr.
Isn't that
Hollows?
correct?
I really can't testify to lot 43.
Okay,
I know,
maybe we have a
I've
question
looked
for
at it and I
whoever.
know what it looks like, but I don't.
And I'm sorry, I didn't get your first.
That's okay. I'm Kelly Targett, Targett. This is my life partner and co-pilot, but I didn't take his name, I think similar
Got
to
it.
this.
No, no,
And your address?
It's 121 Annan as well.
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay. I think we need to sit and look at this. Will we have an opportunity
You
maybe
will
to
have
bring
plenty
other
of
questions if we need
opportunities.
to? Okay.
You will have plenty of
Thank you.
opportunities,
And we're
okay?
gonna try to move over and take a closer look at it. I
Yeah, please move
appreciate.
forward and, you know, you can move your chairs anywhere you want to.
Thank
Can I ask him a question?
I don't want to displace you that much. I think if we could just go maybe like right here. Are we taking
Okay, Mr. Zelli?
And I'm sorry, just if I may, Madam Chair, I think Ms. Target and Mr. Storch asked for the opportunity to potentially ask more questions of Mr. Hollows.
No problem.
Not a problem, thank you, because we're proceeding with the second witness, so I want to clarify that. Okay, and you're already sworn in?
Ms. Light, please just give us your full name and address for the record.
My name is Kirsten Light. I'm at 13 Victoria Drive, Basking Ridge, New Jersey, 07920.
And are you the sole owner of that property?
I am, and I live there with my husband and my 2 children.
And what ages and genders are your children, just for the record?
My daughter is 18 at college, and she's 18 at college in South Carolina, and my son is 7 and goes to Liberty Corner.
And is it fair to say the 2 of them in particular are a primary motivating factor for putting a pool in your backyard?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the obvious question, and we're going to get, actually, let's do the photos first.
Okay.
For the record, I took the photographs. There was a little bit of delay in filing, so it might have been a few months before the filing, but first I just want you to go through and indicate what is portrayed in each photograph, take them in the same order that they're stapled, which is the order the board has them in, and just please confirm that each one does in fact portray how the property looks at this time.
How much detail do you want me to go into?
I'm sorry, can you?
We'll let you know if you're being too
It
detailed.
may just be me, but you sound as if you're kind of talking to each other. If you can
Apologies.
speak directly into the mic, clearly that would be helpful for me at least, thank you.
Okay.
Maybe others.
Okay, so the very first picture that you were provided is a picture that looks like it was taken from about the middle of Victoria Drive, facing directly to my house. On the left-hand side, you can see a tree and a long driveway. In the driveway to the left, you'll see a black truck and a white car. That is the area that we're proposing to remove. We currently use it as extra parking for cars because our garages are small right now, but we are proposing to remove enough of that so that the basketball hoop can still at least be somewhat used by my 7-year-old son in some way, shape, or form. Is that detailed enough for you, Mr. Zavadi?
It is. Let me just ask you, though, in addition to the basketball reason, do you utilize that extra area that's still going to be left? You heard the testimony that 40 feet might be a little more than absolutely necessary. Do you use that area for maneuvering your vehicles when you go back out?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Now let's go to the next one.
Okay. The next picture is, again, from Victoria Drive, looking straight on at that driveway, so that gives a better view of what the driveway looks like and the impervious coverage related to that. If you look off, I guess, over on the left, really at the corner, you can start to see some of that gravel catch basin, so to speak, on the left, kind of middle of the, right to the left of the flagpole.
And while you're discussing that, do you know, first of all, how deep the Riverstone bed is and what was under it?
If I were to estimate how deep that was, it probably is between 3 and 4 feet overall when it was originally dug, and it was dug just based on dirt. The reason why, should I go into the reason why?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So when we first purchased the house in 2018, there was existing impervious coverage in the backyard where there was a very large fire pit and a very large brick patio, almost the same size as the pool that was there. I don't know if the previous owner permitted that, but what we had discovered during that summer is that the backyard became completely unusable because drainage wasn't considered when they put that impervious coverage and the fire pit in. So we were having a lot of flooding issues towards the target's property as well as towards the left side of the property. So when we removed that existing impervious coverage, we removed a lot of brick, we removed a lot of stone, we removed a fire pit and redesigned it for better drainage. We put in 2 drains in the backyard that would have pipes underneath the lawn that would help divert some of any excess water so that our backyard could be usable at that time, and it diverts all the water from our backyard to that side area to help with the drainage. So since we've done that, we did that in the summer of 2020. We have not had any flooding issues, and previous to putting the pool in, we were able to use our backyard and it remained dry.
And do those drains remain in place now?
Yes, they do.
I'm sorry, if I may ask for an interruption, I believe the chair wishes to ensure that the neighbors have the copy of the photographs that were
Oh.
submitted with the application notes, so they can follow.
They said they don't need them, but
And if I may, when you refer to the side yard area with the gravel, you're talking about that front southerly portion? again?
Yes, it is the area colored onto the left side of the drawing that has the circle in it, and that would be the gravel area. So it was basically river rock, and that's all that's there. So it diverts some of the water. The water, it has actually never overflowed since we've put it in, and it just helps the water dissipate throughout the yards, that it prevents flooding in the back.
Is it your understanding, having been obviously involved in installing the drainage, that it's also to keep water from going towards the property that these folks own?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. One of the other things that we had noticed when we moved in this occurred actually, I think in 2019 was the summer. I apologize, I need to correct that. That's when we took out the impervious coverage and put the drainage in. It was that summer. What we had noticed when we moved in at the end of, in the spring of 2019, is that the lot, I don't know what number it is, but it's the one that abuts 44, the Target's lot, next to us. I think it's numbered 43 on that drawing.
Yep.
That yard has a tendency to flood and retain quite a bit of water, and we had a bunch of mosquito problems, with that. That has just been an existing problem, so I'm not sure.
where is it flooding?
The property has a house kind of to the right of the lot And to the left of the lot and the lot that abuts the Target and Sorge's property, sorry about that. To that, there's a bunch of trees and low areas and whatnot, and some of the things that we have done to try and help absorb that water is that where we have property on the other side of our fence, we've been planting additional trees that are water absorbing to help absorb any excess water from that area, because
So is water from lot 43 coming onto your property?
it occasionally will come under our fence, yes.
Are we talking about, can we just
We're talking
clarify?
about the-
Yes.
Are we talking about 43?
No,
Or are
no,
you
no, I'm
talking about
sorry.
the lot between
The lot
you and-
between
So the lot between you and
Yes.
the Target?
So that's
Yes.
7.
Yes, I'm sorry, 7.
It-
Apologies.
No, lot one, I
Or
think.
Lot
This guy,
one.
right?
Yes, lot 1. Yes, lot 1.
Now, that property, like, I drove in your neighborhood today, and that whole neighborhood seems relatively flat.
Yes, yes.
So it's not pitching towards your property, it just tends to flood?
No, there just tends to be standing water right where all the trees are. It's just been like that. So we actually, like I said, we probably plant about 5 to 10 smaller trees every year where it makes sense on our property, because I think if you look at the drawings where our fence line is, our property goes a little bit beyond the
Yep.
fence line. So we've been planting trees on the other side of the fence to help absorb any water flow.
Right, in the far western corner, it looks like you're talking
Correct.
about, right now.
Correct.
So just so that we understand the site, so it sounds like you do get some water from lot 1 onto your property? We get,
Occasionally, if we
Okay.
have a really bad storm.
okay, and we have pooling water from 43 behind you as well?
I've never had a problem with
Well,
any
where's the-
water.
Where's the mosquito problem that you're talking about?
On lot 1.
On lot 1? Okay.
But, yeah, we've
three
never
and-
had any problems with the water runoff in lot 43.
43.
Okay, and lot 3, any issue with lot 3?
Is that the one to the?
That's the other adjoining
No.
neighbor, so nothing.
On the left.
No, we've never had any problem, and that retention, bed on our property is far away enough from their property that it does not interfere with their home in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, it's never
Prior to
flooded.
your work in 2019,
Mhm.
your backyard was flooded?
Yes, it was
Yes.
flooding, yes. And after that, we have had no flooding
You've had
problems
no problem.
whatsoever.
Okay.
So you have 2 drainage pipes now that all bring the water to that front gravel?
Correct. It pitches it away from anybody's home and anybody else's
And where are
property.
they located?
I'm sorry?
Where are the 2 drainage?
If you look on the drawing, there is,
Take this with you.
if you look on the drawing, there is a yard drain right here from the pool where the pool pitches down towards my patio. And there is a yard drain here where it pitches down towards our yard. And there's a pipe that goes underneath this walkway that goes to directly underneath the fence to drain into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Ms. Light, you had the drainage work done in 2019, a couple of years before the pool.
Yes.
So you just worked the pool in around the drainage that you had there, or you just
They-
modified it?
They had to cut the pipe when they were
Yeah, yeah,
building
I
the
would
pool,
imagine,
so they
yeah.
just
There's a
reattached
lot of
it.
disturbance
They
back there.
reattached it and made sure that everything was working right.
So it's hard to tell from looking at this, but do you think that most of the patio is collected by those 2-yard drains, the pool patio?
Any of the runoff?
Yeah, the
Yes.
runoff associated with the pool patio.
Yes, yes. The way the back of the pool is, particularly towards the Storches and Targets property, is that we've actually planted some weeping red buds that will help absorb that water, and there's mulch beds back there. And then there, behind the shed, is some of that really, really terrible soil
Yeah.
back there, but we've never seen any water back behind our shed.
Okay,
And we've never had our shed flood in any way, shape, or form either.
okay.
But the plantings were done to catch some of the runoff or to
It's
help with
the-
some of the runoff?
The plantings were done not just in case that there was any runoff, but also to help mitigate the flooding that happens on our neighbor's property, just to help absorb any water. Every time we have a lot of emerald ash trees that we end up having to take down. We probably have to take down about 4 of them a year, so we try and plant, like I said, like 5 to 10 trees every year, kind of to replace that.
And when you say the flooding on your neighbors, are you talking about the?
The standing water. I wouldn't say it's flooding, it's just more standing water.
Okay.
And that's lot one, just so we're.
That's lot one.
Lot one.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Should
The
I go to
next
the
photograph
picture?
would be the one with the shed.
Okay, so the next photograph is taken, if you refer to the previous photograph, right where the lacrosse net is, that would be about where you'd be standing on the other side of the fence, looking back towards the far corner, where it kind of looks like a pie shape, in the backyard. So the Target and the Storches property would be behind the shed. I think you can kind of see maybe a little bit white of their rooftop over the shed at that point.
Next picture.
Okay. The next picture would be taken on the opposite side, standing right in front of the shed, so looking from the shed towards that, almost that drainage area.
Can I ask you, on this picture, it looks like the rocks are on the patio. Are they on the patio, or are they abutting the
No,
patio?
no, they're not, no. They built the rock, they built the waterfall first, and when they did the pavers, they built the pavers up to the patio. So when you look at the waterfall, they put a whole bunch of different size rocks and drainage so that drains, and that drains directly, which we really don't have too much drainage off of that with the waterfall, but any drainage goes to that weeping redbud tree and gets absorbed by the mulch beds behind there.
And those rocks are sitting just on dirt? They're not
Yes,
on any kind of
correct.
impervious coverage?
Correct.
Is there a portion of the patio that's under, like a small portion on
No.
the edge of the rock? Like, is there one rock sitting on the edge of
No.
the patio?
No, literally, the pavers were cut to butt up right against the first rock, so there's nothing underneath.
And there's dirt.
Dirt. There was a lot of dirt.
And that dirt doesn't get in your pool?
No, they put liners all throughout with the way that they did the waterfall.
Sorry,
so
are there liners underneath the rocks?
they're in, I'm not an engineer when it comes to building waterfalls. No, there's no liners underneath the rocks themselves, but in the way, the fountain or the filter for the waterfall itself, where the water comes out, around that. And I think we have a weed liner for my flowers to try and prevent weeds. Okay. Should I proceed to the next picture?
It's up to Mr. Zelli.
Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me one second. Okay, so the next one is your deck, if I'm.
Okay, yes. So the next picture is almost at the exact same location, right in front of the shed, and that is looking directly towards the back of my house. So what you can see, excuse me, to the left is the patio with a much smaller fire pit that was there when I bought the house. Our hot tub and the fence, so that would be, if you're looking directly in the front of the house, would be the right side of the house related to that. I don't know if you have any questions on that, or if I need to provide any more information.
No, okay, next
Okay.
one.
Sorry, and are these rocks on the grass in that photo? By
Yes.
your patio?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Mhm.
They're just decorative rock things?
Decorative
Okay.
sitting rocks around the fire pit. Mhm. The next picture is a picture from right outside the addition to my back. So on the right-hand side, you can see a deck that is, I believe it's Trex, that we had to replace in 2019 because our wood deck was rotting. And you can see the paver patio going up to the hot tub and the fire pit.
The deck is open space.
Correct. Correct.
And the deck, you just replaced what was
We
already
replaced
there?
existing, yes, we did not expand the footprint in any way, shape, or form. We just took out the wood and replaced it with Trex.
Next shot?
The next shot would be from, essentially from the fence, looking directly at the pool. So what you can see is the row of hemlock trees that have been planted and growing, and those were planted by the previous owners to help obscure the vision from the pole barn, which you can see is a rather large structure located behind the house. So you can see the foliage and all of the flora and fauna, so to speak, that we've planted and installed to make sure that we can mitigate any additional flooding.
And just to be
I
clear,
just want to ask again, are you sure it's just dirt that goes up to your pool?
Yes.
Like, doesn't the top of that pool have to go all the way around?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, the coping looks like it goes around.
No, the coping, interesting enough, the coping stops because we ran out of the coping, so we stopped it in the area so that we could put so I didn't have to buy a whole new flat of it, so,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Ms. Light, I'm trying to understand about this fountain. There's a fountain that throws water over these rocks?
Yes, there is, there's, I guess, a pipe or filter that comes right
But it
at the top.
recycles the water?
Yes.
This is not something that's regularly throwing water off
No,
towards the
it
property?
recycles the
Okay.
water, and it's turned on by the filters.
The water comes from the pool?
Yes.
It comes-
Is the property behind you some kind of a farm? I mean, why do they have a big pole barn like that?
It's big.
I've wondered that myself.
I
Probably not the
can
subject.
give you hearsay from the local residents that I talked to that it was a contractor's owners at one time. Yeah.
Yeah, the woman that owned the home before she passed away and gave the property to her son, ran a landscaping business.
So just to be clear, when you're looking above the pool in this last photograph and just over the evergreen treetops, that entire gray silver area is the roof of the pole barn, correct?
Correct. It's a lovely structure.
Okay.
Okay, can you point out, so which part of the patio, is it the bump out area that wasn't on the original plan?
The part of the patio that got away from us, that when I wasn't paying attention, would be where the deck chairs sit. So I
Yeah,
think that's
that
the
bump
fourth.
out.
Yes, so that's the
Can I
fourth.
just ask you, when you say you weren't paying attention, what does that mean exactly?
I was working from home, so I honestly, my landscape architect gets a little bit excited at times about making
But even
things
though it
look nice.
wasn't permitted for that? I mean, there must have been extra discussions around the bump out, extra costs around the pump out.
had to have the
Like, did you
materials,
pay
but-
more for it? I mean,
To my honest recollection, I can't remember.
you can't remember having conversations about it?
About having the bump out, no, I can't
He
remember.
just built it on his own and hoped
He's
you
a
liked
family
it?
friend that I actually trust quite a bit, so unfortunately, I wasn't paying too much attention to that, and that
But
is.
how did he have the materials for it?
He orders all the materials for us and delivers it, and I just really honestly didn't pay attention to how many there were.
You didn't care what it looked like in your backyard? You were just gonna surprise me?
Call me when you're done? That doesn't sound like.
If he wasn't a family friend and if he had
But
already.
this is your house, I mean,
No, I understand.
Beautiful
So
layout, I
So
mean-
the stages of our backyard development was the first part with the fire pit and the deck. So he had already done that, so I had asked him to design something to make it the same
Yeah.
and to make it, in comport with the home.
but
And
after the permit or before the permit?
before the permit, and to be honest with you,
Please.
yeah, no, I'm definitely not being dishonest. When I looked at the original survey for the permits, I was having trouble reading that, and I thought that that was actually on there. So I thought that that bump out was part of the plans when we submitted the permit. And I know I had discussions.
So wait, it was part of the original plan and it wasn't a change as you go?
I thought it was part of the original plan because I trusted my landscape architect to talk to the surveyor, to talk to the pool person with that.
Okay. Did you understand that part of the driveway had to be removed as part of?
Yes, I did, and
what
when-
happened there?
So when we got the permit, we wanted to see how much of the driveway we needed to remove and to see if we could keep some of it, because my daughter had just started driving for her car, so I wanted to keep as much of that area as possible. So I was going to come here to ask for that, without realizing that we had gone, with the original drawings, that we had gone way over. So we were waiting to determine exactly how much. We're completely willing to take out that part of the driveway as well as the additional that's been proposed.
None
With-
of your consultants realize that
I'm not entirely happy with my pool person, to be honest with you, and I was really upset by his lack of communication, to be honest with you, and it was very difficult to deal with, so I think, you know, and even when the survey needed to be done for an as-is survey, I believe the original surveyor is no longer in business, so.
But even not paying attention, no offense,
Mhm.
when it's all done, you walk outside, you must have at some point in time said, oh, wow, right?
It's nice, yes, don't get me
And
wrong.
At that time, it had to be a realization, wow, it's bigger than I thought, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Mhm.
That's the only thing
Yep.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely, but I guess, again, like I said, I don't read these drawings for a living, so I don't, from a spatial I'm an accountant, from a spatial
Even
relationship.
from an accounting standpoint, I'm assuming the bills were more than you expected them to be.
Not
No?
really.
Really? Okay.
Any other questions?
Do we have the original permit and plan?
You do.
We have the original.
Yeah,
plan.
it was included in our packet.
That was included with the
This
application.
is the original permit plan?
Yeah, it should be dated, the latest revision is 1/21/21, looks like.
This is the Murphy and Hall, this is the original.
It's D&H Engineering,
DNS, yeah.
DNS, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just give us a few minutes.
No, that's fine, take your time.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I'm baffled as to how whoever was building this couldn't read the 3-foot dimensions on the original plan all the way around the pool.
It says 3 feet.
Yeah, it's noted in 3 different places, and at the end of the pool where the extension was. I mean, they were aware that you were working to a lot coverage.
Yes, they definitely were aware.
Is the pool the same size as what was on the plan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Pavlik, can you
Is the
speak?
pool the same size as what's shown on the plan?
That is my understanding. The pool originally was meant to be, I believe, 18 by 36,
Yeah.
and that's what it is.
I was just asking, since a lot of things changed, did everything change?
Fair enough. Fair enough, no.
I think I'm struggling with the fact that you knew part of the driveway had to be removed,
Mhm.
but you had no issue with the much bigger coverage in and around the pool in that bump out area. That didn't seem conflicting to you?
It was honestly, it was already, they had already done it
Like you
before I
didn't
even.
look at it until it was finished, or?
They literally did that entire bump out and that entire paver in one day. The only thing that was left on day 2 was the stairs. Was the one stair that was put in.
The existing, I mean, the pavers on the front, the pinkish pavers, those were the existing pavers?
That is the work that we did to help with the grading in 2019.
Have you done any additional survey work that might show changes to grade elevation? We're looking at grade elevation shown only on the original plan. When you look at the photos, no offense, the pool and the coping and the area surrounding the pool clearly appears to be higher than the grade. So it would give the impression that the finished project grade elevations are different than what was shown on the January 21st, 21 drawing. So it's
I'm not sure if that's a.
Question for me.
Well, it's a question, has there been any other survey work done to establish, let's call it November 8th, 2022 grade elevations?
No. We were really looking for lot coverage at that point, location and lot coverage. So we didn't do grades. And typically, you do set a pool up a little higher than the ground around, because you don't want that overland flow to come into the pool. You want it to go away from the
Right.
pool.
Okay.
And what I'll tell you is consistent on the permit drawing. They do have that. They have a little platform. They take the 98 contour and they wrap it around the pool. They elevate the pool to get the water away. And then in the 2 swale locations that they note, that's where the two inlets ended up, because they weren't sufficient, so. I don't think the grading is substantially different based on what I'm looking at. I don't see how it would be. I'm encouraged by the fact that the lawn inlets are directing a lot of the runoff over to the left. But it's, you know, it's hard to know without an as-built topo exactly what's happening.
Exactly what I was saying, because even on the drawing, looking at these grade elevations, you're talking about .6.
Yeah.
Okay. And no offense, most times when you dig a hole and you do finish grade, extra dirt ends up in that general area. So it grows, that's why I'm asking. So I'm asking in the context of, I wouldn't be surprised if today's finished pool grade elevation is higher than what's shown on this drawing, meaning that there's even a greater slope towards your property lines, when now we're dealing with an increased pool surround area, is why I'm asking.
I mean, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I think that, because of the lines, most of the sloping actually occurs towards those drains, and everything is much more gradual going back towards that fence, and that's the biggest area of I would say, sloping.
Sorry, when you say that fence, I just want to make sure I'm following you.
The
Which
fence
fence?
on property 43,
43?
where the pole barn is. And I believe, I think that, that this was mentioned earlier. I think at some point, he might have built up a kind of a berm of some point on the back side of the fence and planted trees.
Okay.
I think, but that was done prior to me, so I think that they have kind of like a blocking thing that goes there.
So lot 43 created a raised planting area?
Like just kind of like some raised dirt area on the other side of the fence is there. So it seems to be a little bit higher there. So, we just kind of go slope very, very, mildly towards that property, but.
And then it just kind of stops.
And it just kind of stops, yes.
Okay.
If I could jump in again. The area where we're talking where the extra patio is, would actually drain towards the drain that's in the lawn. It doesn't go towards the property line, it goes
Yes.
towards the drain, which goes out to the gravel pit.
Were the rocks part of the original permit?
Yes.
And how did we get here when it was inspected,
Oh, at
when the
least I
permit
believe
was
it
to be
is.
closed out?
Was it?
I don't see it.
Oh, maybe it wasn't. I'm sorry. I thought it was.
Yeah, the rocks aren't all on there either.
No, lots are not.
Just for
I
the
thought-
record, they're not impervious. They're not
Right.
part of the coverage calculation.
Correct.
Did you or the contractor receive the permit? Who actually went down and did all the,
The permitting work?
yeah, the permit that was obtained? Did you do the ferrying? Did he do the ferrying? Who did the actual submitting of the documents?
I did not submit the,
Okay.
I don't think I submitted the documents. I believe that it was, yes, it was
It's
him.
done by him.
Yeah, it was done by him.
Did you do any of the work associated with the permitting?
Did,
Any of it?
not that I can recall. Not that I can recall. Sometimes I may have gone and paid something related to it, and, but other than that, I don't believe I submitted it. I didn't submit it as a person. I did hire a licensed contractor to deal with that.
So what happened? You did the permit, they did the building, and then somebody went down to inspect it, and that's,
Did they do
How did
ask
we
for
end
an
up here?
as-built, or how did you know that you were,
So there was some question on the impervious coverage.
that came out as a result
that
of
came-
inspection?
No, that came out as a result of the permitting process, and my permit was granted on the contingency that I got an as-built survey.
That's where it came up, the as-built survey.
I need to understand that.
Anytime you're that close to impervious coverage, they wanted to make sure you were gonna build what you said you were gonna build, which,
Right, which didn't happen. That was the whole thing.
so when you submitted the as-built survey, somebody looked at it and said, this
Yes.
isn't what you
This
submitted?
is an
Yes.
as-built.
which is long after you paid your contractor, no doubt.
Of course.
Okay. Mrs. Ellie?
I just want to go over the last three items on Mr. Schley's report, since they're from his light. The driveway columns, the lighting columns, which are best seen, I think, on
Yes.
photo number 2.
Yes, photo number 2. So there was, again, we were we really liked the person that we bought the house from, but we found out that he kind of played fast and loose with permits and doing things on his own. So we tried to get all the permits corrected, but we didn't know what we didn't know he did. But they had electricity. There used to be a light pole out there already, and he never disconnected the electricity, so we didn't realize that we needed a new permit. So we installed the columns and just ran the existing electricity without realizing we needed a permit. As such, it appears that it is in an area where we have limitations, and as such, I've reached out to my landscape architect, and I have asked him to move those, and I will be submitting requests for permits before we rebuild those in the proper location.
So you're going to have them rebuilt outside of the right-of-way onto your
Correct.
property?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we will move them outside of the right-of-way, assuming we get approved permits.
Number 9, would you confirm that any lighting in the pool and patio area shall be directed downward or otherwise shielded so that glare, direct light, or
Yes.
reflection will not be a nuisance to adjoining properties?
Yes, we've installed, around the pool, I believe we installed what we call 3 tiki lamps. And what the tiki lamps do is they have a cone, a triangle cone that will hold on the top, has a well for citronella oil, so that you can light the tiki torch for any bug purposes, but the light that comes out of it shines down towards the walkway. So we've installed 3 of those. There are 3 pathway lights that have been installed that all have kind of a cap on them that pushes all the light down. Other than those lights, we have installed a couple of uplights. There is a small uplight that highlights a small Japanese maple tree on the back edge with on lot 43. There is an uplight that highlights a blue spruce and the weeping redbud right behind the waterfall, which is blocked by the shed. So it just highlights the bottoms of those trees. And then there is 1 light that shines directly on the waterfall so that it doesn't disturb any of the neighbors.
And from your eye, do any of those uplights shed light onto any of your neighboring properties?
No,
Have you had any complaints from any neighbors about lighting?
not so much.
Okay.
Good, not that I'm
And then-
aware of.
And the last question I'll ask you, the town has a best management practices for swimming pools, and do you agree to comply with those rules?
Absolutely, absolutely. The last thing we want to do is, this is our forever home. We don't want to upset the neighbors in any way, shape, or form and violate any rules, so we really are trying to do the right thing here.
Thank you. Nothing further from Ms. Light?
Thank you, Mrs. Ellis. Have you heard any other concerns or any concerns that haven't been mentioned already from any of your neighbors about your project?
No, actually, on the contrary, the neighbors that have come by and have seen the project actually thinks that it adds a lot to the neighborhood and have been very happy about it thus far. So, no complaints.
Questions for Ms. Light? From the board? Questions based upon the testimony you just heard?
Yes,
Wait, can you just wait until you get up in front of the microphone? Either one is good. And just remember, questions.
Yes, no, it is a question, thank you.
And procedurally, just need to give your name and
Again.
address each time.
Kelly Target. Do you need me to spell it again?
Nope.
It's like the store, but with an extra T. That's what stops me from being an heiress. And it's 121 Annan Road.
121 Canyon Road.
And I ask for some indulgence because, of course, I'm asking these questions as a layperson, so I've learned a lot of vocabulary, including pole barn today. So, I wanted to ask, though, I think in the summer, this pool would be one thing, right? It's open, there's water coming into it, but in the winter, I presume it's covered.
Mhm.
And so, have you noticed a change? And I don't know the timing when all of this was done, but have you noticed in the winter any issues with water accumulating on whatever the coverage that you put on the pool is? Or where does that go when that happens? Because I think the elevation concerns come to mind with that.
So the cover is impervious, and what happened, so it absorbs the water to the point where the pool will fill, and then there is a pump, but the pump would pump that water, just down to the levels to keep it at pool level, and it would pump that down towards those drains that go away from your home.
Okay. I just wanted to understand the difference between the seasons, so I think that's
Thank you.
good for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Slide?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask one question of our engineer? And I by no means intend to suggest anything as to be considered, but I'm just curious. If the board had any further concerns with respect to stormwater management, in light of the fact that the impervious coverage is exceeded, notwithstanding it's, does not meet the threshold for even, I guess, minor development, let alone major, what, if anything, could the board consider that could be done that might even be arguably reasonable both in its effect and in its cost?
Well, from what I'm hearing from Mr. Hollows, the soils there are probably not going to be conducive to any kind of underground impound. So you're left with trying to divert surface water out to the road to the degree that you can. Without topography, I can't tell if it's possible to take any of the water from that back corner adjacent to Lot 1 that appears to be problematic and bring it out to the roadway. So, but, you know, that would be the only solution. It's a far way to go from the back of the property to the front of the property, and without topography, it's hard to say whether that would even be possible. But gravity feeding a low area out to the road, that's why I asked if there are inlets. If there are inlets out front, usually those are several feet below grade, they provide a nice opportunity to tap a pipe in that situation. But we don't have this here, so there are very limited options in my mind is what I can suggest without topography. But having driven out there, I don't think that it's so flat, I doubt that area in the back can be drained towards the front. I don't think there's sufficient topo or grade to bring that water out to the road in any way, which is no doubt why it's sitting where it is now.
So is there anything you can do? No.
I mean, well, if you wanted to take it, if it was a real impact, you were really concerned about it, we'd have topography. You'd have the applicant do a topography. That would only determine whether or not you could do anything. You might get a topography and then say, well, really can't do anything about it. So, that's
Isn't
about,
Thomas, it's hard to understand, I guess I hear what you're saying, and if the street drains are 7 feet below the ground, you're talking about a 200-foot run of a pipe from that back corner. That's the whole length of that property line. So it's possible at any depth with the right pitch, quarter inch, to get it out to a 7-foot street depth. It's possible.
oh, no, it is,
Yeah.
but they're saying it's 200 feet from, again, it's possible. When I look at these things, again, since they're homeowners, I look at what's practical, not just what's possible, what's practical. So again, impact has to be considered, but I don't think it's practical to get a storm sewer from the house at 200 feet down the street would be difficult.
But we're being asked to believe that the 2 grade drains in and around the pool surround travel a similar distance to that far corner of the property to a bed of rocks that sit on top of impervious soil, and we're being asked to believe that it drains well and holds the water. That's why I'm asking. So I can't believe A and B together is why I'm asking.
So the bottom line is, without topography, I can't
That's
really
why I
help
asked
to
the
advise you
topography
any better
question,
than that.
because I'm sure the pool's higher than it's shown. It's a lot easier to leave the dirt than take it away.
If you drained it to the
Especially with the
street, what are you
liberties
draining
that
it
we're
to?
taking.
Is it just I'm sorry, if you drained it to the street, what are you draining it to? Like,
Well,
Is there
anytime you get it to
a
the
sewer
street,
pipe?
it's presumed that there's discharge. I mean, I will always attempt to get, in any of the towns I've worked in, or any projects I've worked in, I will always try to get the water out to the street. Because there are storm sewer somewhere in the street, and the street is pitched to a storm sewer, so that's the least impact to the adjacent residents when I get it out.
There's a fee for an application
Right, it's
for
the same
a
distance or
storm
less.
opening, a storm drain opening fee. Because I had my house downspout drains tied into the street sewer, and I paid the fee to have the connection made into the.
Yeah, one-time fee to core the inlet, put it in,
You
yeah,
put
right.
it into the storm drain, that's 7 feet below the grade, it's pretty simple to do.
And it sounds,
You have to run the pipe though.
it sounds like getting the pipe to the street around the house is on the wet side of the property
Yeah.
anyway. And it is a short, it's the same or a shorter distance to the street as it is that gravel?
Again, without topography, it's impossible to know what's.
Can I ask you, Mr. Quinn, is a topography study worth it? Is it, in this specific case, would your recommendation be to order a topography study? It's a tough question, I know.
It is a
but-
tough question,
I know,
because
but I
what I'm
wanna ask
hearing
you.
is, if I thought that this application by itself created the drainage problem, then I would say yes. But what I'm hearing is that Lot 1 has always had a problem, there's water back there. You've got Lot 43 behind this, where they've bermed up, where the topo from this permit shows the water had once gone. So now they may have bermed it up so that water is trapped on this lot. So it sounds to me like there are inherent drainage issues there that existed that it's hard for me to make the leap to think that, especially with the drains that have been described to me, that this has made that situation substantially worse. I don't see that just from what I'm looking at.
But it's been known to the property owners. It's been known since they walked into this home, that they've had water retainage concerns, we'll use that term, because they've done a lot of work before they did the pool. So
Well, but
then
they've moved it.
cover those concerns.
Oh, no, and what they've done is, I totally understand, and I'm not trying to minimize any of this. But what they did was they moved the water from that low area, which was probably adjacent to, that back corner where they are, and Lot 1 probably was all low. So they built a little platform there, they took the drainage and they directed it over to the other side of the lot. So they have shifted runoff. At the end of the day, what really surprises me is that they didn't request a topographical as-built. They did an as-built,
The new
but
drawing shows-
I'm surprised that the engineering department didn't require a topographic as-built, just to show the inlets and all of that, but.
Is that something that you guys would like me to do? Because I'm very willing.
I think, well, we haven't reached that
Okay.
conclusion yet. I have to turn my filter on.
Right, but think, if we do,
Yeah.
why are we doing it, right? So it's to what end? So,
You did state earlier in your testimony that the drain pipe that you had installed before the pool was put in, and they were doing the pool, it interfered with the line and had to cut it and reconnect it. So possibly even being an accountant, did you notice if the pipe was solid or perforated? Did it
They,
have holes in it?
no, it does not. So, literally, when the bulldozers came for the pool, they broke the pipe. So when it was open, we replaced the broken.
So it had to be a solid pipe?
Yes, it's a
broken.
plastic, yeah.
Perforated pipe would have collapsed, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no other inlet to that pipe except the two sources, that's why. Yeah.
yeah, it's, again, they've shifted the water
Right.
to that
Water
spot.
from A to B, right? And no offense, if you guesstimate that distance from either of those to that pile of rocks in that corner, that pile of rocks to accept the water has to be more than 3 feet deep.
But, to be honest, what I'm seeing here is, I'm surprised that the owner, if there was any real impact associated with all the work that's been done, it'd be the lot owner of Lot 3. Lot 3, because of the shifting of water, it would seem like they've taken a lot of the water that was in the backyard that impacted their lot, Lot 1, probably 43, and they've taken that water and shifted over towards Lot 3 on that side.
But I'm questioning, does it get there? I don't even think it gets there, no
Oh.
offense.
Oh, yeah, no, you can't tell by looking
No.
at this.
It
May
doesn't get
I
there.
respond to that?
Yeah.
So I have seen water that stands in that pond where it does actually get there. And then, so it never overflows that pit, but it will slowly absorb into the ground. So, for example, during Hurricane Ida, that left pond did actually fill up, and then it drained away very, very nicely, and we didn't have any
You have a
issues.
soil condition that you, physically, you would see standing water anyway, and the rocks allow you to see it because it's not covered by grass. That's why you might see it, that's all.
Yeah, but I could see the side pond filling up because of the amount of water that was
Yeah.
coming, and it was
So it was
diverted.
pooling, like
It
it
was
was
pooling,
supposed to do.
yes. It was doing
Okay.
exactly what it was supposed to do. It pooled, and then it, absorbed into the water, into the ground slowly without flooding anything.
Okay. More questions for Ms. Knight?
Mr. Quinn, we always talk about pools being a retention basin when we go through these applications. So we would be retaining more water in the pool rather than running off. Would you consider that an improvement from having nothing?
Well, Yeah, what we do is when we look at the impervious coverage, for zoning, we have one number which includes the pool surface. But for stormwater, I look at something that nets out this, so we consider the pool surface area to be neutral, because there's typically at least 8 inches of freeboard or more, so that if a 100-year storm came, it would hold the 8 inches of rain that would come. So that's neutral. I don't even consider that as part of the runoff
I'm
requirement.
just thinking if there was no pool there and the rain came down, hits the ground and it's hard, the ground's hard and it just runs off to the neighbors. Now we have a pool, so the rain's coming down and it's staying in the pool.
Oh,
So we're
is there a
kinda
net
retaining it.
benefit? There's
We're
no
creating
question.
more retention.
So you got an area where, you're right, the area where, even though there was grass, if the soils
Yeah,
are
it would've run
bad,
off.
if the soils are bad, you're getting, an appreciable amount of runoff of poor soils, even if it's grass.
Yeah.
Whereas the pool water is truly neutral, technically correct.
Yeah, we can argue it's retaining it,
Yes.
so it could be looked at as an improvement.
Are there any additional questions based upon that testimony? We might have a question for you. Do you mind coming back up, Ms. Target?
Could I just make a quick comment? Sorry, Kelly Target,
If you have a
121
question.
Annan Road.
Not a comment.
Well, I think the question I asked related to the pool cover was to that issue of the retention. So I just wanted to clarify again, for about 10 months out of the year, the pool is not retaining things because it is covered and the water is going elsewhere. To
No.
my view, go ahead.
My
That
understanding
is
is
my question, is like, is that not true? So please.
those pool covers are typically porous.
Porous.
They allow water, otherwise they'd be
Okay.
trampolines.
Thank you, that was my question,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's only when it's so much water goes up until the
Right.
cover, and then it gets pumped out, just so it
Mhm.
gets down a little bit.
That helps, okay.
So I think that's what we were trying to cover
Yes.
before. Ms. Baumann had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. How long have you lived there?
We purchased
Sorry,
it,
let me swear you in.
oh.
Sorry, yeah,
That's
I
okay.
have a few questions.
Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony, and while we're at, that you may have already given, as well as that which you will be giving now and hereafter, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So how long have you been there?
We purchased the property in 2015 when my daughter was a diaper still. So I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old girl, right around the same age as Ms. Light's son.
Okay.
So-
Have you noticed a difference in water on your property since the property has been improved?
Yeah, I can't adamantly state enough, that is the reason we are here tonight, is this is the first opportunity we've been given to talk about that issue.
So you feel as though there's more water coming to your property now that the property has been, the applicant's property has been changed?
I know 1,000% is not a thing, but yes, absolutely.
Can you just describe that for us?
Sure, I think the only image of my property that you all have is this map, so this is what I'm gonna be referring to.
It's the aerial exhibit.
Aerial exhibit,
Oh, it
thank
should
you,
be
Mr.
the
Warner.
aerial-
You're going to be an expert by the end of the night.
I'm actually a lawyer, I'm just out of practice, so, and I'm a little frazzled because I work at Meta and Facebook, so it's been a bloodbath, like
Oh.
literally for 3 days. So being here,
Sorry.
it's fine, and we only just got the notice, so we're not very prepared. I actually would have preferred to knock on Ms. Light's door and have a conversation about this, we just didn't
No,
have the
that's
time,
okay.
so.
I'm just-
Okay, so if we look at the property number, we're number 44 on the side, depending on how you're orienting your paper. Our house is a ranch house, but it has a full basement in it, which is finished and has living. There's actually a bedroom, we have a TV room in the basement, as well as our garage that comes off of our driveway. So if you see the red car in that little image, that is my car parked in front of our garage doors, which are at ground level there. And then there's a retaining wall that goes around our property that pre-exists us, as well as if you've driven, I don't know if anyone went down Annan, we have a massive retaining wall that goes around the curve in Annan Road, where literally we've spent $50,000 in the past 2 years landscaping it. It's amazing and it looks beautiful, but we literally did that to try to mitigate the changes in the water that we were getting, and we now have a rain garden in the corner of our property, which you can see, just again, to try and do something with it. So let me say,
Along the street, the rain garden?
the rain garden is in the back corner, you can kind of see, so if you see the little circles in the chairs, that's a little fire pit that we have, but it's all natural stones and boulders, so it's not, there's no coverage there of any kind. In the back corner here, and then, so let me start with a little bit of a timeline. 2019 is when we started to have the issues that we hadn't had before that. So we've been there about 4 years, and I don't know, I was trying to listen to Ms. Light's timeline, but it might be worth to drill down on that a bit more. All of a sudden, our property Again, this is a small shed on the corner along this, where they have a pole barn. We've got a small shed that's, I don't know, 1.5 million years old. That whole back area behind our house of our lawn turned into like a sponge. You couldn't walk on it without it literally,
This was when?
2019 it started.
Is this?
Like
this-
late 2019, early
Is this
2019.
coincident with the drainage work that they were doing?
Well, that's what I don't know, so that's what I just
So
want to
you're saying
present the
prior to
story.
that, you didn't have that issue?
Correct.
And then starting sometime in 2019, it started to get very squishy?
Yes, my husband was looking up when we retained high-tech landscaping to come out, and what they did is they inserted 3 dry wells? Just a number, no, 3? Dry wells? How many dry wells do we have? 2 dry wells. They inserted 2 dry wells and connected them by perforated pipes underground in order to create avenues and roadways and things for the water to go in. We also have an open drain near the shed, so that the water it was just meant to flush the water out. That took care of things. Oh, and then the other thing they did, which you can see, and it probably looks a little weird, we don't have a fence along this mythical patch of swampland here. It is the corner.
I'm
So-
sorry, can you hold that a little higher? I can't see it.
Yeah, the area where we're talking about where the water has been pooling, and I would agree that that has always been a bit of a problem area. There's a white line that you can see along our property there that you may not have context for. What that is it is perforated pipe buried 3 feet in the ground that goes on a slant to the rain garden in the corner, and then they covered it with river stone to literally send to daylight is the phrase that the landscapers use, right? So they're trying to take the water from our land and put it to that rain garden in the corner. Then we planted, a year later, that didn't solve the problems. Things kept getting worse. And so we think, oh, it's global warming, it's this, it's that, right? Who knows what's happening? But for some reason, our land keeps getting worse. We don't have visibility or context about what's happening on Ms. Light's property necessarily, because there are trees between us, and we're not necessarily like next door neighbors in that sense. You have to kind of walk around the block. So we did know she was the only person in the direct neighborhood doing improvements. Not she, it might even have been the people before you who built the extension. There was a whole addition built on the back of the house, and then the pool follows and all of that, right? So it sort of felt like it was a coincidence, but we never got notification of anything, and we felt like we didn't have a basis to object, and we just needed to try to deal with it. So we invest all of this money with high-tech landscaping to install these underground drains. It helps us for about a year, and then the land is back to being soggy. That leads up to us hiring a different landscaping company, who are the folks who actually, this is Colorscapes, who did our whole rock wall with, it's meant to look very natural, and boulders, and everything is supposed to take care of itself. It doesn't quite, because I spend most of my life weeding it, but they installed that whole thing. I mean, the cost was astronomical, but they also dug out the foundation of our house. In another attempt, put in more perforated pipe, put in everything, right? Because during Ida, when that pit at the side was holding water, the groundwater in our house rose so much, the water table rose so much that we had water coming through our ceramic tile, up through our garage.
When was this?
When was Ida? Last year?
Yeah, our basement
Last
flooded
summer.
as well.
As did our neighbors, which has never happened either.
Ours did too.
2021.
So my house is 100 years old. It is not one of the nice houses. We bought it with plans to make it a nice house, and frankly, we've spent about $150,000 just on landscaping, which means we don't have the money to put in a nice pool. So then we spend all of that money. It still doesn't work, because now we find out that due to all of the water in this living space, there's now mold and everything else. So we've had to tear out all of the sheetrock in the basement. And again, none of this was an issue before 2015. It was not an issue in the early days. I don't want to say any of it. I think I'm moving into comments, Ms. Baumann, so I don't know. I want to answer your question and be responsive with a timeline, and I can save the commentary for later, but does that help?
It does help.
Thank you.
It does.
Any other questions for Ms. Tucker
No.
at this time? You will have an opportunity to make a comment.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions at this point?
Would a pool help in their backyard?
No, what I find interesting is this happened before the pool construction. She's been experiencing difficulties before this ever got constructed.
2019 is when they.
2019.
Patio.
Yeah,
improved
2019
drainage.
is when
That was-
Ms. Lights,
Oh, that's when they,
May I
That's when
comment?
They removed the big brick patio and improved the drainage.
That's when they took all of that stuff out.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah.
but then they put the drainage
Yeah,
system
but
in,
that's
yeah.
before the transfer.
And I just want to make clear
That should have
from,
made things better, not worse.
right, I just want to be clear, it has been getting markedly worse over time, and that's what I was trying to say. So 2019, this happens, we put in a solve. It solves it for a little bit, but then things continue to change, and now.
We should hold that for a comment.
Well, I'm just saying, so that's what I was trying to
I
explain with the
think part of
timeline to Ms.
The problem with
Baumann.
your solve is, you heard Mr. Murphy, Mr. Hull say, Mr. Murphy say that there's no permeability there. So whatever you did, it's gonna be short-term. If you did all this underground work and provided all this underground storage,
We're going to retain you after this.
I think Ms. Light wanted to say something else. Did you?
I was actually just going to make the comment that, you know, if these problems started happening in 2019, that was after we were experiencing some of the same issues, and we removed some of that and did the drainage. So I would have imagined that would have made that situation better for that neighboring property.
and nothing was going on with lot 43 behind you. They weren't doing their berm or anything.
It's very, very difficult to tell what they're doing back there
Yeah.
right now. But, you know, the woman that owned the house, a lovely woman, she passed away, unfortunately, and she left the house to her son. Her son lives in Montana. So the back part of that property is, I don't know if it's very swampy, but, you know, it's very kind of free range, not taken care of. It's not like a mowed lawn. It's a lot of very, very high weeds. I think I've seen a metal fence disposed of back there, you know, so it's hard and difficult to tell what's going on with that property back there, but there is a lot of, they do have a lot of driveway where, like, the weeds are growing up through the driveway, and it's a kind of unkempt. So I'm not really sure how that may or may not affect you know, the only thing that I've noticed about that property that has affected mine is just the unsightly pole barn.
And when did you move in?
We moved in, I closed on the house December 10th of 2018, and we removed we fixed the backyard, and did the drainage that summer.
And then when did the pool go in?
The pool was built, it got completed August of '21.
Right, yeah, the permit plan is that winter, January 2021, so it went on that spring and summer, right?
Yes, yeah, I believe all everything was finished in,
And I
you know,
think that
August.
Ms. Target testified that she began having drainage problems. She noticed it beginning in 2015, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
she said 19.
2019.
2019, you said, okay.
I thought you testified that you removed that brick patio in the backyard.
So, yeah, so there was a very, very large brick patio with a large fire pit that, I mean, it was almost like a 5-foot wide fire pit, which kind of scared me with my son, to be honest. But the size of that patio when I bought the house, from an impervious perspective, is probably bigger than the pool that I added, you know, just this past summer. So we took that out, and we removed all the brick and redid the patio so that it was closer to the house and better aligned and better drained.
Was that, you didn't have a survey when this was submitted, this shows the improvements, but you didn't.
Yes. Yeah, that shows the improvements, yes.
Right, but prior to that, when you bought the house, is there a survey of what the condition was like when you bought it?
I'm sure I probably have it when I closed on the house that I can probably look up and.
But that wouldn't, yeah, that was before this.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's hard to imagine. It's really, these are always so puzzling when,
But what I'm
And
Yes,
prior to the work that you did in 2019, and you purchased the house in 18, I think you said,
Mhm.
did you immediately feel that there were some water issues that needed to be addressed?
The only water issues that we felt we needed to address was this hardscaping, because it went out almost like a light bulb into the, like right into the middle of the backyard, kind of where the pool sits right now. And to the right of it, between that area and the shed, was, as Ms. Target was describing, it was just squishy swampland. So we have 2 dogs and my son, it was completely unusable for us to use that piece of the property. The left side of the property, if you're looking at the house, drained a lot better, so we had that small area of the backyard that we were able to do that, but the right side of it was always very swampy, which is why when we took that out, we put the drainage to drain on the other side, because we knew the side on, bordering that property in Lot 1 had a tendency to get squishy and have pool up water on the Lot 1 and that kind of woodsy area right there.
You said you had a basement and you have a sump pump in the basement? You have a full
We have
basement?
we have a full basement finished, we have 2 sump pumps in the
Sump pumps.
basement. Mhm.
So, the sump pumps, how frequently do they run? Do they run?
Very rarely,
So,
only during major storms.
okay, so when there's no storm and it's dry, they're not running? Because I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, is there some kind of spring running through the property that's causing all this water on the neighbor's property?
I don't understand why.
Strange things happen.
I can tell you, though, that if the soils are as bad as they are, all the underground impounds that were created on a property are a short-term solution, right? That's why,
Yeah, and digging that pool was, if it gives you any indication of what the pool water the pool ground looks like. I mean, we wanted to get at least 7 feet, and they told us we would need dynamite and jackhammers to do so, and I
Oh.
thought that would be a bad idea.
oh, so you didn't hit water, you hit shale.
We were completely shale,
Huh.
completely shale, so we ended up, the pool depth, I think, only got to 6 feet, 5 inches. Because there's so much rock and shale there.
Mr. Zelli, do you have any additional?
Actually, if you would indulge us, I'd ask for 5 minutes just to chat with
Let's take
my
a
client,
5-minute
Mr.
break.
Hollows.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And put your mics back on if you can.
Okay. Mr. Warner, you'd like a roll call?
Yeah, can we, I think we're back in session.
Certainly. Chairwoman Juniors,
I am here.
Ms. Baumann,
Here.
Mr. Pavlovsky.
Here?
Ms. Pakhtar.
Here.
Mr. Tancredi.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Quinn. Here. Mr. Warner.
Here.
And for the record, Ms. Kiefer is present.
Thank you, Ms. Kiefer. Okay, Mr. Zelli, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to recall Mr. Hollows to come up to the podium and give us some opinions.
Is your record still in good standing? License, all good? All good?
Nothing's
It's
happening.
still licensed?
You're good?
I'm going to talk about my experience on the home I owned on Granville Way, which is in this same neighborhood. It's only a couple blocks away.
So it's fact testimony, so it's irrelevant whether or not the license remains in good standing.
Okay.
Well,
It's
it's
testimony, but
certainly going to morph
certainly-
into expert testimony, so it's fine.
Okay.
The soil conditions in this general area are, you've got about 12 to 15 inches of clay topsoil. It's a clay material, that's why there's a lot of standing water in the flat areas. Below that, it's a shale, and the water runs laterally in the shale. Now, I've never got down to the point where the shale, went doing any yard work, where the shale went down where I couldn't break it with normal hand tools. I do know that during a rainstorm, it's amazing how fast the water rises through that shale. I mean, I lived at 44 Granville Way, and we were at the bottom of the hill, and there was a lot of wooded area behind the homes there. No one had cleared their lot to the back. They maybe cleared half, so it was a wooded area in that area. There's a storm drain that went across from Lancelot and actually came through the property that I owned. But the storm water would come up really quickly. I could look at my sump pump pit in 15 minutes, half hour after a rainstorm started. And I could see the water just come up in the sump pump pit. Now, the sump pump wouldn't run until it got closer to the top, but normal days it wouldn't run. It would be maybe for a day or two after a storm, the sump pump would run and then it would shut off. Now, I don't think that I think what the folks on Annan Road here, they're experiencing the same thing that I did. The water travels through that shale material. I don't think that what Mrs. Light has in her yard has really caused that problem. I think it's just generic to this neighborhood and to the soil conditions that are there. And, you have rainy seasons and you have that aren't, and it just, you know, I think that's really the problem here. It's not necessarily the pool, and I think the fact that the gravel area works on Mrs. Light's properties, it's generally shallow.
And just to state the obvious, Forte, the last part would be opinion testimony, and of course, be relevant to the expertise that was set forth earlier, and certainly subject to cross-examination by the board professionals and the members of the public who are here, the neighboring.
I certainly
members of the
don't
public.
discount. I do believe that they have the problem. It's the same problem that I had. And I was able to treat some of it because I did have a storm drain that went through my property.
But you didn't review that property? Yeah, but
No, I haven't.
Do you think this is perched water that's sitting between the shale
I think
layer
that that's what
and-
happens. I
and
think
the clay
the fact that they got down to 6 feet and they couldn't dig it any, they couldn't rip the shale anymore.
So it kind of runs
So it-
horizontally in that layer?
Correct. I always felt that if my house was a foot higher, that I wouldn't have a sump pump problem. I wouldn't need it, because I think it went down to, would have gotten down to that hard layer and then traveled, under the house rather than into the basement.
Mr. Hollows, in your professional opinion, do you believe that the drain system that was installed by Ms. Light in 2019 is accommodating and accounting for any groundwater issues on the Light property vis-à-vis these folks?
Since it's solid pipe that goes from these inlets to that gravel area, I don't see where that would, and that gravel area is quite a distance from the home, so I don't think that would be it.
Now, what I'm asking is do you believe, in your professional opinion, that the drains that were installed on the Light property are doing their job? Are they taking the surface water elsewhere and not harming these
Having
people?
walked the property several times, I would say yes, it captures the water in those general areas and takes it over to the gravel.
Okay. So in your opinion, that it's not, the groundwater, I'm sorry, the surface water is not what's impacting Mr. Storch and Ms. Target?
Yeah.
The surface water on our property, on the Light property?
If there is some groundwater from our property, or surface water from our properties, it's back behind the shed, that little triangle, but it wouldn't be the majority of the yard. It'd be just a small area of the yard.
And it would be staying on our property, though, as opposed to going over onto theirs and affecting,
Yes.
creating the issues they've
Yeah.
described? Thank you. Thank you. I have nothing further for Mr.
Any
Hollows at this
questions from
time.
the board? Any questions? Come on up.
Sorry, I think
We need
Mr.
to ask
Quinn,
you again.
Kelly Target, 121 Annan Road. I think Mr. Quinn took my aerial survey, or whatever we're calling that. No, I just wanted to understand, the shed, could you show me where the shed is on this aerial image, or show us?
Back here.
Okay.
That might be it, that little.
Got it.
Can you
And
show the
just so
board
you know-
also?
Yes, I'm gonna hold up.
Bear with me, please. 1 minute. For the record, Mr. Hollows, can you explain directionally where you were talking about? Is that the
It'd be southerly of the pool, the
the
waterfall.
location of the shed? The location of the shed is to the northwest of the pool?
It'd be directly
Correct?
direct westerly.
Direct west? Okay.
And so could you then, looking at the aerial shot, and it's been indicated that this is the shed over here with my property right here, it does seem as though that shed where you're saying the runoff would be is adjacent to my property, is that correct?
Well, you only touch at one point, so there's a triangle.
Yes, it
Let
feeds
me-
into
let
the
me-
triangle where my property is. I just want to make sure we're clear.
Your property is this, they touch at this point.
Right.
So what I'm saying is only this triangle has a potential of going towards your property.
I just wanted to clarify, it is on my property line, so I think it is closer to my property line, not on the other side. That's all I wanted to make sure we understood. Thank you.
Is it possible that there's an issue on this property that's causing more water to flow to Lot 1, which is then flowing more so to the Target's lot?
Well, that's it.
So we're saying, your response was that their property is only that top corner, but there's a property that's in between them. And if there's water coming off Miss Light's property that's going to the property in between them, and then that water is being further pushed off to the target property, is that a possibility?
That's a good question, really good question. Visually, when I'm out there, and I've been doing this for a few years, and I have a pretty good eye for where the water flows. A good part of this part of the yard, and I'm talking about the northwesterly side of the pool, between the pool and the patio adjacent to the house, drains towards that drain inlet that sits next to the walkway. So possibly there's a little bit there, but it would be more from the tree row towards the lot 1, and less from this lawn area that's between the property line and the pool.
This is why I think a topography study would be very helpful.
I'm just wondering, is the water that's running on your property, do you physically see it running? Or, like, when it rains heavy on my property, I have some low spots and the rainwater retains it. If it rains very heavy, I do get some runoff from a neighboring property because the topography is a little higher. And then I could see it running into my yard. So do you see water running from other yards, not just Miss Light's yard, maybe other properties?
For the record, you're asking Ms. Target.
I'm asking
Yes.
Mr. Target, yeah.
Kelly Target, 121 Anna.
We're talking about runoff and
No,
impervious.
the
so-
answer is no. I have no issues with what Mr. Hollis is saying about likely, to me, I would think of it as the water table is rising. I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying. I think that's exactly it. What I see is a stormwater issue in this neighborhood that is getting worse over time.
Yeah.
As construction continues, I think it is something I would ask the board to consider in an ongoing way and be aware of, because we need, I think, as neighbors, to be finding those solutions together, rather than me fixing my problem and hurting someone else. So that's really the nature of why I'm here. But no, I'm not seeing a waterfall, a torrent. I do think Lot 1's tree area is lower, actually. You can see, and this, I think, is where maybe a mosquito issue would come in the summer, for example. Pools, swamp. I call it swamp. I said to Mr. Hollis, I wouldn't be surprised if it was wetlands, because that area is so unkempt, and it's natural area. I don't blame anyone for that, but it does invite the water to pool there. And then when I think the water table rises, it goes wherever it can to the path of least resistance,
So you
would be
think
my
the
guess.
flooding on your property is more of a water table issue? coming
When there's
up?
stormwater,
Stormwater, yeah.
I don't think, it's not bad today, but if it was raining, it would be bad. We've had to install sump pumps. We've been having trouble getting an electrician to call us back to actually
Well, it was
pull the
hard to
permits,
get.
but, so we have the sump pumps ready to go, but we've not needed them because it's been very dry. So part of this conversation is so hard to have right now
Yeah.
because we're coming out of a drought. And we don't know what the summer will be like next year, but that's why we want to just make sure we're being mindful
So
about
your
it.
sub pumps are functioning the same way.
But they're
Hers are,
not-
when
they're
it's
not firing
raining,
off.
They're not running, but when it starts to rain, they start to run at some.
And I plug it in with an extension cord, probably shouldn't admit to that under oath on, but I plug it in to make sure it's not tripping at all. And I think that's consistent with what others are saying. It's really only when you have good storms or a rainy season when the pool would be covered, which is why
Where
I
are
was
you
asking
going
this
to
question.
drain your outlets of your sump pumps to?
We already took care of that when we had to tear out all of our, all of the drywall in our basement, and we installed behind the wall a thing that will feed out of the sump pump, so it ejects onto our driveway. Is it the gutter? I thought it was our driveway. Okay, it goes into our gutter system, which is all connected underground through our magical maze of discharge systems.
Two dry wells.
2 dry wells plus the whole rain garden plus all of that, yes. If you need him to speak, you can swear
I
in
was
and
waiting for the husband to acknowledge or change his facial expression.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've been married to him for a long time, it's not gonna happen. You need to
Boy,
come up and speak,
you gotta
and
come
be
up
sworn in and all the whole nine. Okay, I'm gonna step away for a moment.
Name and address again?
121 Ann Road, So there's
Mike, you have not been sworn in.
Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And it's Michael Storch, you said?
Mike, just don't Mike.
We'll go with Michael for the record.
So there's 2 dry wells. One, the dry wells are all of the, we'll say, the gutter water goes to, is on the far part of the property with a pretty steep incline. About And the other dry well is the one that she was talking about, the rock wall, so to speak. And that's just like I would just say like a collection area that has the drain, and that's another dry well. So. Well, okay, where are we? So if you're looking at 44, I would probably say right about here would be the stormwater from the gutters from. Yeah, and then the
Please, somebody speak in the mic.
and then I'm sorry, and then the other dry well, which is along that white perimeter that my wife talked about.
Okay, and do you feel that your property, it certainly has water issues, and I feel for you with respect to that. Do you feel it's been negatively impacted by Miss Light's projects over the last 2 years, or you're not sure?
I can't say. I mean,
Okay.
there was this huge mystery as to what is going on, but then I hear all these facts coming out at this meeting, and I'm like, the bell went off. It's like, wait a minute. I think I have an answer. I can't prove it, but it just seems like it, because that area outside that she's mentioning, it is literally a swamp.
Okay.
And the area beyond, on I think to property 1, it rains a little. You can't go back there either. It's even worse. So I do feel that water is coming off, potentially off her property, onto 1. It has nowhere to go. And then it comes to ours, because water finds a way.
Thank you.
Can I
Yes.
ask Ms. Light, where do your sub pumps drain when they pump? Just
I
for the
will be
record.
honest, I would have to have my husband here to.
Just out of curiosity. Could you
I
point me in
literally
that
have no
direction?
idea. That's
Something that-
beyond my home ownership capabilities. But I can find out and get you an answer to that. But we do have 2, one on each side of our basement.
Okay, so there's 2 and
There's 2. I know both of them are towards the front of the basement, towards the front of my home. So I would assume, based on that, they probably drain out to the street.
typically you would see a pipe coming out of the foundation and spilling out onto the lawn, and then it would disperse from
All of that
there.
stuff, yeah,
You would
all of
know
that
if there's
stuff is
one-
out the front of the house, yeah. All of those types of pipes are out to the
But
front
you
of
don't
the
know
house.
100% for sure if it.
No.
Do your gutter leaders go down into the ground? Or do they splash out and run?
The ones in the back are tied into those back drainage that goes to the side yard. The ones in the front, the one on the right-hand side where the other sump pump is by our garage, so is on the opposite side of their property, and that just drains out.
Onto the surface?
Onto the surface. And we have red bud trees there to help absorb any excess water related to that. The other side of the house, I'm honestly not sure, but I do remember having a conversation with my husband saying that he wanted to work next on tying those possibly into like a storm water out to the street in the front.
Did you
So-
install that gravel area that's on the
No,
northern
that
part?
was existing, that was
That
existing.
was existing.
Mhm.
And since you said earlier that you do see standing water in
Oh,
the-
I'm sorry, this gravel area or
No.
this gravel one?
You said you saw standing water in the Riverstone area that you installed,
Mhm.
which is, we'll call it the northeastern corner of your property.
Mhm.
That gravel area that was from a prior owner, do you ever see standing water in there? Because obviously the gravel area remains.
Mhm. This.
Yeah, do you see water there?
No, never, never. That gravel walkway is more dirt than gravel. It's fine little pebbles,
It
but
says
we.
gravel area.
Yes, exactly, no. But I've never seen any water there. There's never been any flooding on that side of the house.
It's funny, because it's like a walkway to nowhere, that's why I was asking.
Well, we have a gate that goes there, and we have a generator back there. So there is a generator, so that gravel walkway leads to our generator. And then through the gate on the other side of the fence.
I have a question. I've noticed between the two plans, the Murphy and Hollows plan and the DS engineering plan, the area where your fire pit is, on the original DS engineering plan that was done in 2021, that area is shown as gravel, and it's clearly pavers, and it's shown as patio on the Murphy and Hollows plan, and it's clearly pavers in the photos.
It's shown as gravel on the original plans?
It is, yes.
Oh, that's always been pavers. So I'm not sure why
It
those,
says gravel walk. That whole ground area there. This way here is patio.
does that make sense? I think that was an error in the initial plans, because that's always been pavers from 2019
Yeah,
forward.
that was an existing feature prior
Yes,
to the building.
correct.
A question for Mr. Hollows, if I can ask one. What you're describing with the water flow on the, like in this area with the perch water between the rock layer and the soil, if one property increases their impervious coverage, isn't that going to direct more, it's gonna have more flow off of that and have more water flow in that perch layer, is it not?
It's a good question, but I just, I lived there, like I said, for over 20 years, and I don't know where it all comes from. I just know that behind my house, and between my house and Landslide Road, there was a lot of wooded area in those backyards, so, and then plus there was a storm drain that went through there, so there was a natural swale, and I just wondered sometimes whether that was poor construction in the storm drain, where the joints weren't cemented, or what really brought it there. I don't know, but it was fascinating how fast the water would come up.
Yeah.
Now, whether some additional impervious coverage would make a difference there, I really couldn't tell you.
Thank you.
What could answer that question?
Tom?
Well, based on what he's saying is there's a clay layer above that, right? So water wouldn't get to that. The only way water would get into that would be, that's why I think what was done at Ms. Target's property was probably not the best thing for it. What those guys did was they introduced a bunch of surface water into that layer. So that layer is just gonna hit and run horizontally and impact water tables all around it. So
So it corrected one property but impacted others.
yeah, that's why you have to be careful about just throwing water in the ground and just summarily in all cases, because it doesn't always help. Surface water is a nuisance, no question about it. But if you're gonna take surface water and inject it into the ground where it's got nowhere to go, and you're gonna cause water table rises in the ground, that's not helping anybody. So,
Well, Ms. Target had mentioned that when they first installed their wells, it improved. But also, they used the perforated pipe. Is it possible that the perforated pipe filled with sand, and that's why it's no longer?
no, what's more
Working.
likely happened is that whatever permeability was there, it worked initially, and all that void space now, it's not percolating anymore, so there's no volume left. So the volume's not being replenished. It happens a lot to put dry wells or any kind of subsurface impound in moderately draining soils. It'll work for a little while. It'll fill up really that slowly, then all of a sudden, it's too much, and the thing.
Once the sponge is full of water.
Yeah, right,
It's
it's
not a
done.
sponge anymore.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
All right.
I think, Mr. Warner, did you have additional questions before we go to comments?
Believe it or not, it's not stormwater management related, but, before we go to public comment, but, and it actually relates more towards the applicant's argument, which I suspect we're gonna hear on summation. But, in fairness to everybody, including the neighbors, maybe we should hear it before summation. And, the bulk variances, as we know, are argued as to either being one or both of the following: C1 undue hardship or C2 flexible C variance criteria. Mr. Zelli, before you tell us what you're arguing in your summation, what are you arguing, C1, C2, or both, and why?
Both?
So that people can respond.
Yeah, it's combination. C1 doesn't answer the whole call. We are a slightly undersized lot, and if you take a look at the numbers, But for the undersized lot, our coverage would be 16.41%. I'm taking that actually out of Mr. Schley's memo. And if you discount the pool surface water area, you're down to 15.3%.
Let me ask you a question on the C1 argument, so that the board has everything in front of it. A plan was submitted for a zoning permit which provided for conforming impervious coverage, correct?
Correct.
And I don't mean to be cross-examining, you know, I'm asking the correct questions, but I think we know the answer. If, as was the case, a conforming proposal with the pool and the patio, et cetera, was achievable by virtue of the plan that was submitted, showing impervious coverage of under 15% and a pool patio setback of 20 feet or more, i.e. conforming, wouldn't that run counter to an undue hardship argument? Isn't the undue hardship argument, it would be an undue hardship to comply or conform with the setback and impervious coverage requirements, but it was conformed with had the improvements been installed in accordance with the plan that was submitted and approved?
No, well, when you're dealing with a C1 in this type of situation, you're comparing whether you have a compliant size lot versus an undersized lot. What you're really looking at, I mean, is it possible to comply? Of course it's possible to comply.
It would have been compliant had it been installed in accordance with the plan, correct?
Well, the problem we have is I don't think anybody has any credibility in that original plan at this point. It was completely off in every way, shape, and form, as your engineer has testified. But to get to your question, you can have a small lot and you can comply physically. What you're really looking at from a hardship perspective is, can you have the same pool, essentially, generally speaking, on that lot that your neighbor has, or is the smallness of your lot keeping you from being able to do that? So what we're looking at here is you compare what we have to what it would be if it were a compliant lot. And we're still a little bit over, which is why I'm saying it's not solely a C1, but the undersized nature of the lot does come into play. As far as a C2, you know, you're looking at improving housing stock, you're looking at values of the property neighborhood as a whole, which, as you know, are valid considerations. And as to the negative criterion, from a visual perspective, a screening perspective, really the neighbor that would be affected is this huge pole barn. There's no visual opportunity almost to see except from that barn. With regard to the stormwater runoff, obviously we've had a huge amount of discussions on this. And I'm not an engineer, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's a big question as to whether what the neighbors are experiencing has anything to do with this project. The timing literally doesn't make sense. They started experiencing the problem when we installed things that should correct the problem, and by all accounts is taking water to the other side of our property. So it sounds like the problems are from something else. Even if they started in 2019, though, the pool didn't exist in 2019. The pool was built 2 years later. And that's what we're here for tonight, is to address the pool project. So it certainly doesn't seem like the pool project is causing the problem. And to the extent that that would be the board's consideration, are we causing a problem with this project? The answer seems to be no. And that's our position on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And
Can
that-
I
hopefully we'll shorten up the summation that you were gonna give earlier, which might have been.
It was the summation I was going to give up earlier, so.
In fairness to the applicants and everyone else, I wanted to hear the arguments in advance so there was an opportunity to ask questions. and make
Understood.
comments.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's a time, if there's anyone from the public who wants to make a comment about this application. No, it doesn't have to include questions. You can say whatever you'd like up here.
Thank you.
That's
Kelly
Kelly
Target,
Target,
121 Annan Road, still under oath. I got it.
And you're already sworn in, so
I
you're
am.
good to go.
And I do want to invite anyone who has questions to ask them of me. I don't want to be cryptic by any sense. Is there a time limit? Other than that the meeting ends at 10:30? I understand. I'll try to keep it brief, but if it's only 2 minutes or
No,
something.
no, go ahead.
Okay. I think understanding a bit about the neighborhood, since I've been there just a slight bit longer, might be helpful for the board to take the whole situation into context with the changes that have happened over time. So what we're calling a pole barn, I have fondly called an aviation hangar since we moved in. It is a massive structure. The person who used to live in that home drove school buses for the town, and she passed away rather tragically one day. The whole neighborhood was kind of there, and it was really horrifying and sad. But she parked the school buses in there, and every morning at 5 a.m., she'd come out, turn on the school bus, and that would be my wake-up call every day, that she was running school buses out of there. She also ran a landscaping company. She was an amazing woman. She was a complete, like, I don't know what you'd want to call her, like a player or what, but like she had her game, and she did a really good job at it. But she used the property to dump landscaping waste. So she would bring yard trimmings and all of those sorts of things and pile it up in the back, as well as pieces of iron, machinery. I don't even know what's back there. So when she passed away, the property went to her only child, Herbert, who lives in Montana, and hasn't actually been around this year, although in the past he spent the winters here with his son. So I don't know that he necessarily got notice of this. I mean, I know we officially got notice, but like the Bedminster post office couldn't figure out how to deliver this, and that's why we got it yesterday. And I have to imagine others were impacted in the same way in the neighborhood. Like, I work from home. They claim to have rung the doorbell. The doorbell never rang. I don't know. But anyway. So I just want to say that property has been an eyesore. When we moved in there, it was really tough. It was like, what do we do? Because it's on our side. There's a fence that actually we think is on his property line that is completely decrepit and falling down, and it needs to be changed. And I really appreciate efforts to beautify the neighborhood. I think Ms. Light, like us, has one of the older homes. We are surrounded by new construction of big, beautiful, multi-million-dollar houses that have come up in the past 20 years. So the neighborhood has changed a lot, and I don't know that any of the folks who've been coming in have been thinking about issues like drainage and stormwater. It's almost like, let's keep building until there's a problem, and then we'll leave the problem to whoever the person holding the hot potato at that moment is. And I understand that's the way it all works, and so it's why it was important for us to come tonight and speak up, because the house across the street, which you can't see, but so we are lot 44 again here on the aerial with my little red car, and this is Annan Road coming. It's not marked, but that's Annan Road running there. You can see a house across the street there, which is another one of those really old homes. Apparently, the person who lived there passed away. I know this because they used to feed the feral cats, and all of a sudden starving kittens showed up on my porch with my 7 and 8, 10-year-old daughter. So now I have a feral cat colony that I'm having to feed and try to figure out how to take care of. That lot is currently for sale. I believe it is 3.8 acres or something along those lines, and they are definitely marketing it as subdivide and build. It's on a dangerous curve in the road, and we're going to have 2 or 3 houses there now that are going to further take away the permeability of the neighborhood and create more and more issues over time. So I know that that's not before the board tonight, but I think that overall context may help to understand why we're passionate about this. The other thing that I think may help to know is that the lot 1, all right, so we're talking about what appears on this aerial photo as like a brown spot because it's the middle of winter. And I don't know when this was taken, but when we moved in, that area was actually quite beautiful. It was lush and green, and yeah, it was wild, and there were deer and whatever, and feral cats, of course, but, it was just a nice thing to look at. It's full of ash trees. I think Ms. Light made this point as well. They are all now dead. So whatever contribution they may have made toward drawing water from the soil, using it to grow greenery, and things of that nature is gone, and I'm left with a property line of dead trees that, when they fall, are going to fall on my house. So this is something we're dealing with quite comprehensively, and that's just what I wanted to advocate for. Ms. Light has clearly put a ton of work into her house. It's gorgeous. I would love to have that house. Ms. Light has invited me over. I was dealing with cancer during COVID, and so I had chemo, and I couldn't be around people, so we've never quite made that happen. This is not about Ms. Light. I appreciate what she's trying to do, and I don't want to make it any harder than it needs to be, but I think you can't solve one problem and create others, and I can't prove that that happened. I got the notice yesterday. I don't have an engineer with me. Nobody's looked at my property, but I can say over time, the trajectory of issues we've had is on an uptick, and we have literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it, and I would hate for any other changes in the neighborhood to make that worse without considering that impact. I don't know about the berm he put back there. I will say, I haven't seen that necessarily either because he's gated off the property quite considerably and installed security cameras, so we don't go near it ourselves. But I do know he was digging a lot of holes and things in the gating, so it may be that he took some of the dirt and sort of put it on the back of the property, but I can't speak in particular to why that was done in case anyone's wondering.
If I may, who's
This is Herbert, sorry,
Herbert, lot.
I don't know his last name, but it's 43.
43 is what you're talking about.
Woodruff, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. And there was some
Just keep
talk.
track of the lots.
Sure, because my perception is that his lot is much lower, it seems to me anyway, but I think maybe Ms. Light could speak to this, than Ms., maybe not much lower, but there seems to be a drop-off there, because there's a fence that is considerably higher than this property is. And I don't know if that was dug out, or if it has always been that way topographically speaking, but it just seems like over time, there's all of these little changes that are contributing and making things worse from 20 years ago when Mr. Hollis lived in the neighborhood. And I don't dispute any of that. I would like to say, can we pause for a minute, be thoughtful, maybe as neighbors without the board's intervention, to try to figure out, can we plant some trees in that space? Do I need to pull up the $30,000 worth of underground drains that I put in because we got bad advice from somebody, right? We just need to sort of try to figure it out holistically, and that's just what I want to advocate while making sure you have the context to make the right decision. Hopefully that was not too long, but if anyone has questions for me, I'll stick around till the end.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Target. Thank you very much for coming. Are there any other comments? No. Mr. Zelli?
Other than what I've already indicated, what's striking me as I'm hearing, and I very much feel for the neighbors, having grown up in a house with water problems, I know what it's like, and it's a horrible thing. But what's striking me is I don't think that these problems are being caused by the extra 2.5% that we're dealing with here. These are problems that even if we had a compliant situation would still exist. I mean, that's just apparent from what I'm hearing from your own engineer. So we're asking you to look at this application like you would look at any other application in town, where somebody is a couple or 3% over, and the reason for it, and whether the positive and negative criterion have been met. And I would argue that they have in this case, for the reasons that I stated before. But it's getting late, and we appreciate your patience, and we'd appreciate a positive vote.
Thank you, Mr. Zelli.
If the board's deliberating now.
We're about to.
Okay, as you know, pool patio setback 19.3 versus 20 feet required. Impervious coverage 17.45% versus 15% maximum permitted. The two bulk variances, the applicant has argued both C1 and C2. Board will decide. With 5 board members, we have a quorum sufficient, 3 out of 5 majority for passage. And of course, if it is a passage, I'll assume, unless I'm told otherwise, it's with all stipulated 2 conditions. And if there's any additional conditions of approval, please let me know. Let everybody know.
Thank you, Mr. Warner.
So-
Okay, so we heard a lot tonight. Does anybody want to kick us off with, I would assume there'll be some deliberation on this one. Do you want to start?
I'll
Mr.
start with a
Creedy? Thank
couple
you.
of comments. I mean, I would like to have seen some topography, just so we can see how the water could drain off the property. I think the pool and the drainage that was installed is helping the situation. It's actually pulling water away from Lot 44. And I would like to have known where the sub pumps pump out. So there's some unanswered questions that I would like to have had answered tonight. At the same time, I'm not 100% sure that the water is coming off Ms. Light's property onto the neighbor's property. I mean, we just can't say for sure. So that's what's troubling me right now.
Thanks, Dave.
So, go ahead.
I was going to just follow up on Dave about the topography, because the small noted elevations that were on the original submitted plan versus today, it's just hard with, let's just say, all the liberties that all the contractors took, that the grade remained as it was originally shown. It's just impossible to think that it did. And I guess what I'm feeling is, is it might not be running from Mrs. Light's property, but if Mrs. Light's property elevation changed significantly enough, it's now itself creating a buffer or a water channel. I'm not saying it's her water, just that some of that water that she knew when she bought the house, because she did remediation work. Now, is this creating a buffer that this water's not coming onto her property now, because everything she's done is working wonderfully? So is this now channeling water? I'm not saying it's her water, but if these improvements raised her property, this very minor change in topography could now be actually eliminating any of this water flowing onto hers, and it's going into others. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think we're gonna have to, take a look at that. That's why, but, even digging the pool to get down to that shell layer, I mean, I know you said shell, but I don't know how much the elevation's changed. Yeah. So,
I have to say, I agree with Mr. Pawlowski. We need a little more information to know where, like, what the grades are, so to know where the water is being directed, and also the drainage system that you've put in. We don't really know that much about it, as to where it's exiting and where, what other properties, or is it just impacting your own property? If you're directing that much water into a rock pit that's 3 feet deep and is on top of clay, where's it going? It's gotta go someplace at a certain point. It's gonna fill up. So in my mind, we need to know more about the topography as well to really understand
even the
this.
adequacy of the 2 grade drains you have, because you could calculate 1/4 inch per foot. If it's a 200-foot run, it's gotta be 50 inches of pitch. And 50 inches of pitch, that drain starts at 12 or 18 inches down. Now that river rock area would have to be 6 feet deep to even be an outlet for the pipe. So the topography, the adequacy or functionality of the drains have to be evaluated, yeah. I don't know, I broke the pipe, you connected a pipe. The left side could be higher than the right now, I don't know that, just you connected 2 pieces. Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, my mindset is the same. I just don't think that we have enough information.
Yeah.
I think that there's a very good chance that you've corrected the problems on your property. We don't know if it's impacted anyone else without seeing where the water is flowing, seeing what the topography is, and having some sort of a study. The opinions are wonderful. Living there is a wonderful way to see, what's happening. And I'm shocked, quite frankly, because my sump pumps run 24/7, and I don't live on shale, so I'm not sure how yours aren't. The other thing that struck me is that Ms. Target mentioned that in 2019, she noticed a difference, and that's when they started trying to rectify the problem for themselves. And since then, it has continued to get worse. So I know that you made some improvements in 2019 that should have actually helped her. But even once you put the pool in and other improvements on your own lot were made, the stormwater was getting worse on their property as well. We don't know what's happening on the other 2 properties. We just don't have the information. It's one of the reasons why we like to see these things before they happen. So it puts us in sort of a tough position to say, well, it's already built. What are you gonna do? But we don't know if it's causing problems for someone else. We probably need to figure out if there is something more that we can do. That's sort of how I'm looking at it.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann. I'm along the same lines. I feel like, our job here is to make sure that the positives outweigh the negatives, and we're just not sure of the negatives. We heard testimony that in 2019, that problem got worse. Maybe it's because what you did, maybe it didn't, but we're just not sure. You didn't have to come before the board last year or in 2021 because, you were just under 15%. But those plans weren't followed, the plans were inaccurate, and now we've got problems. Whereas beforehand, we try and understand, would there be problems? Now we know there are problems, we just don't know if it's caused by it. So I think, and maybe Mr. Quinn, you could help us here. I think there's 2 directions we can go. We can order a topography study or something else that's gonna make the board more comfortable in terms of whether we have runoff issues. And as you know, stormwater is just a hot, hot issue for the reasons Ms. Target said, and we're well aware. Ms. Target, thank you for stressing that, but it's very important to the town as well. So we want to make sure we get it right. So I think we could order a topography study and carry this pending more information, or, Tom, we could maybe work on stipulations if the board, and we haven't discussed whether the board is even comfortable at the 17%, but if the board's comfortable at the 17.5% or whatever the variance is that you're asking for, could we make that a stipulation such that, you know, it has to, we have to have a topography study and it has to have a drainage that satisfies the board, or the engineer? I don't even know if that's a thing.
Yeah, here's where I think, we have someone who's here obviously, excuse me, complaining about impacts associated with drainage. We have a plan that shows how it was supposed to be built. We get an as-built plan showing a lot more hardscape. We don't have a topography. What I would like to do, what I would be comfortable doing, is getting an as-built topography of what you did, comparing it to the grading plan, cursory though it may be, comparing it to the grading plan that was approved. You can tell from the grading here whether there's additional drainage area being tossed towards the Ms. Target's property or not. That's what a topography will tell us. Then we can rule out at least that more area hasn't been directed towards the Target property. Sounds to me like there's also stuff going on the property behind Lot 43 that may have impacted the situation.
You're not here tonight, so.
But all I can do is look at this and determine whether or not the as-built topography and this permit topography are consistent, and that the drainage areas are consistent. If they're inconsistent, however, then there might be some additional drainage that has to be considered. I hate to leave it that open-ended, because the area seems like it's so problematic from a drainage standpoint anyway.
No
But
doubt, right.
we just want to make sure that the as-built grading doesn't create any drainage impacts. And if the outside likely scenario that it did, we're going to have to address those.
I have one other thing too. The rocks, I mean, those rocks are just so enormous.
Wait,
and
are you saying by the
so-
pool?
By the pool, and so heavy. I'd really like to know what's under there.
Yeah, I'd also include that as a stipulation.
You mean
I really want to
The
know.
rocks that
wanna
are
know
right
if
at the
there's
pool
anything-
edge where the waterfall is?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
How
think
can
it's
those rocks
unlikely
not,
they're sitting
how can they,
under.
how can they just be
I
on
don't-
soil? And how does that
It's-
not settle with with the magnitude
Well-
of the weight? How does that not settle and cause an issue?
They're not on topsoil. The compressible soil is topsoil. Any organics will compress. The organics in these developments are always stripped from the construction site. That doesn't mean that they don't necessarily have to bring stone in to underlay small stone, a pad to underlay the rock. If the underlying soil is free of organics and is able to compact itself sufficiently, you could put the rocks right on it in situ material. It just can't
And
be.
then compact it and then put the rocks
Oh,
on
you
top
compact
of
it first. No, you compact it first and then put the rocks on it. But as long as the material under the rocks isn't organic, it won't compress and settle and move all over the
It
place.
will settle.
It's full of clay.
Everything settles.
Oh, yeah, no, over time it will, but not as much as,
Everything settles usually pretty immediately, but.
right, but it's
this
organic
is the-
materials.
That's disturbed soil,
Yes.
so who knows how well they compacted that? And to have that not move, I'm thinking it's likely that there's something under it.
It's possible, but I don't know that it's impacting the drainage here. I'm not sure that that's something that's
Well,
gonna.
it's not being counted as impervious coverage, which I'm not confident.
Oh, well,
that
yeah,
it's
that's something else
impervious coverage.
entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of what's under it, the rock is not absorbing water, so
Should be counted as impervious.
that has to be counted. I think that's what
But it
David,
What
wasn't
does that
counted.
increase it from?
I think that's what
17
David was talking about.
Well, he specifically was asking what was under it
Right.
for that purpose. but-
17.45%, you're saying then is not the number, it's higher than that?
Yeah, I have no idea what the rocks would add to it. I couldn't tell
That's
you what that is.
relevant, if not material, to the
Yeah.
application, isn't it?
You say it's 100 square feet?
It's a little, I think it's 115, 120.
We want to at least do the math, not that that's gonna,
Well, Yeah, I mean, if we've got, let's see,
The pool contractor put it in, it could be 200 square feet. He does everything.
you're at 17.5 now, right, Bill?
Yes.
You've got,
If the board is inclined to send us back to the drawing board a little bit in order to get a topo put together, then we can.
You may wanna
We can
continue.
do those calculations
All right.
as well and change our numbers back.
that sounds good.
I would feel more comfortable.
Carrying the application, and then you're doing more work
That-
such
that's-
that the board can, you know,
that's-
you've heard the board's concerns.
Yes, that's acceptable to the applicant. Discussed with Mr. Hollows, carrying it just to, and I don't even know what your calendars look like, but even carrying it to December wouldn't work probably anyway, so we would request to be carried to January if that's available.
Cindy?
I hesitate to put them in on the January 4th meeting with
January
signature.
4th, our reorg and regular meeting, we have signature acquisition scheduled for that night?
Correct, and this doesn't seem like it's going to solve itself in a short period of time.
Do we have a second meeting in January?
I
I'm not, or we have one in February too.
We have to
Really
squeeze it in.
hate
We're
It's-
looking at a pre-existing, let's call it violation, really, it's pre-existing.
It's already
We don't have to
there.
Squeeze it.
Yeah, right.
We're not-
Is there a notice
There's
of
no rush
viol-
for construction, it's
Is there a
done.
notice of violation that's?
There's not a notice of violation.
No,
Ms.
I-
Ketteretz was
couldn't
very
think of a
interested
better
in
word
us
than
getting this
violation,
filed,
sorry.
which we finally were able to get filed. So she's, as far as I know, does not have any concerns at this point.
But not, and not under any time constraints?
No.
That are imposed by?
No, and I don't think we're swimming
You can't
in
use your pool
February
to
anyway.
resolve this.
We also have on the 16th, February 16th, we have scheduled New Jersey American Water for the 5th time.
Is that our first meeting or second?
Second meeting. So February, the first meeting in February, whatever that is, let's see.
Is that the only application you heard, is the New Jersey American on the 14th?
On the second meeting in February, which is the 16th.
Yeah, and I hate, quite
The
quite
first
honestly, to have so
meeting
much
in
time in between it,
February
because we
is
have
the
to
8th.
recap so much. Yeah, how about, so this, do we have a second meeting in January? Not that I want to do that. so-
We do. I usually try and shy away from that because there's so much else going on for everybody, but it's up to the board if they decide they want to go to that meeting.
Yeah, I would either do a second meeting in January or first meeting in Feb. That's what I would vote for.
There's nothing on the agenda for the first meeting in February.
Is the first meeting in February okay?
That's fine. Do we
Okay,
know
let's
what
do
date
that,
that is
so
offhand?
Excuse
Do
me?
we know what date that is offhand?
February 8th.
8th?
8. Okay, so we'll carry this until February 8th. Thank you very much.
Without further notice.
Without further notice.
Thank you.
7:30 PM, same location.
Okay. February 8th.
Thank you all very much for
Thank
staying
you
up with us
very much.
tonight.
Sorry.
Have a great night.
Okay. Okay, so we already discussed the American Water case. Cindy, we are canceling the November 17th meeting?
Yeah, not too many of us will be here.
Okay, good, so we'll cancel that. Are there any comments from members or from staff?
Just that you got your invitations for the holiday party, and if you would email me your sandwich selection, that would be great.
Thank you, Cindy, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Thank you, Mr. Anthony, thank you.
Have fun, David. Night-night.